Backcountry. Hello, everybody. How's it going? Today we have Jon Kelly. Jon is the host of the amazing Lost Lakes YouTube channel. He is a very well-known and well-traveled canoeist and an amazing backcountry fisherman. Jon, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been watching you for at least 10 years. When did you start uploading to YouTube?
I guess
15 years maybe?
Yeah, I think a while ago, and then it wasn't but I only uploaded like a couple small videos, and then I was doing some other stuff for magazines I wasn't even running on my channel. So trying to get my channel actually like monetized was a huge, so I started maybe 2 years after alone, and I couldn't monetize it because I had these old videos that I downloaded from Field and Stream's website with permission, but YouTube was like looking at it like it was stolen content. Mm-hmm. So I had to keep uploading and deleting videos and like putting all this work for pennies, and then finally I got monetized. So it wasn't really until 2019 when I started actually like really giving it on YouTube, which is good because the magazine industry that I was working with before that kind of went, took a dive, right? So
yeah, and YouTube was such a different place back then. Like I remember the first time I saw you on YouTube, I think it was your Kisagami River trip.
Yeah.
You had horribly burnt your hand, and I was just thinking this guy's nuts because you went ahead with the trip.
Yeah.
And each episode was thematic, so it was like 4 minutes long or something, because back then we didn't dream that people would watch a 3-hour video on YouTube. We didn't dream it.
Not.
Well, I wasn't even dreaming of doing YouTube at that point. I had never made a video. But like one episode was about like bandaging a wound, and one was about cleaning a fish, and each episode had its own theme, right?
Yeah. And then I tried. There wasn't enough footage to put it all together into a single story. I would have started this earlier too if I knew people really wanted to watch that story, but that was people's attention span. You got to keep it short. You got to keep it. Field and Stream had me very like kind of almost robotically sort of like, now we're going to do this and we're going to like concise and exactly. You know what I mean? But then some guys like you started having success and just doing what you really wanted to do out there and filming it.
Yeah, and it started purely as a hobby for me.
Yeah.
I was watching guys like, I think before you, I was watching Kevin Callan and Brad Jennings, or Joe Robinette, and then I think you probably came into my feed after that. But and you guys blazed the path. I never would have dreamt this was going to be a thing.
It's awesome. It just gets you. It's a lot of work. It's not necessarily for everyone. People probably just see like, oh, Jim's doing all. Even before when I was making like below the poverty line when I was freelancing, you probably could look at my YouTube channel and be like, wow, Jim's taking a float plane into northern Quebec and canoe. You're probably like, wow, this guy must be making a ton of money. Really, I'm getting home like on fumes with no idea how I can fill my tank, and oh my god, some sponsor check that I forgot about is in the mailbox and I'm saved. Like that's how it was.
I remember you telling that story. I remember you telling another story. Actually, this is the second time I think my second memory of you. Yeah. You were speaking live at the Wilderness Canoe Symposium or something like that in Waterloo, I believe. And you were telling your story about going across the Ngava Peninsula, which I still think is maybe the gnarliest trip you've ever done. Like
I would say
raw. And you were describing your old buddy Buck and holding his phallus to keep it from freezing off. That was a distinct memory I have of you.
It was, and I learned that lesson from a dog sled musher before this trip. So he'd run the Yukon Quest.
You didn't just improvise that.
No, not at all. And he told me before I left, he's like, Jimmy, Jim, you watch out there. And this guy's done the Yukon Quest, the Iditarod. I was like, those dogs' penises, they'll freeze right off there. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, Jimmy, I've been at the side of the Yukon Trust Trail with a dog's penis in each hand trying to warm them up. And I'm like laughing, and he's getting mad because I'm laughing. He's like, look at that dog over there. His penis just snapped off like an icicle. And he points over, and there's just a dickless dog that he's pointing to. Okay, that part's a little bit of an embellishment. But not really. Like this dog really had like a surgically removed. And I'm like, anyways, day one, there my dog's pecker is freezing on day one in a blizzard. So, but after that, I was like, well, I don't know if this could get much, worse. Like what's worse going to happen than my dog's pecker freezing in a blizzard and, me barely getting my tent up? I'm like, got that off the way. Let's go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, like you can attest to that, I'm sure, with some of your trips. Maybe not in the Arctic, but like I see you're getting out there in winter. Everything is like freezing cold too. It's where you live, right? I mean, -30. Like how many -30 days a year do you have in northern Ontario, like real northern Ontario, north of Lake Superior?
Yeah, I would say like throughout the winter, two nights a week are going to be in the -30s, roughly.
Right.
Yeah. So
here we get like maybe a week of the year where it's like hovering around -30, -33 to -27 for like about a week, and then like kind of on and off a bit. Right, and that's sort of like standard. So.
Yeah, and I kind of enjoy the deep cold up there because you just have reliable winter. Like if you want to go out and do something on the lake, you can be assured that it's frozen. Yes. Even some rivers. However, I don't like walking on rivers in winter. It just feels sketchy to me, especially if there's any semblance of current. You go through the ice and there's current pulling you under the ice. Like that's terrifies me.
Because what do? You get swept away under the ice by the current.
And you have to hope that it's thin enough that you could break through again. Yeah, I hate that thought.
Yeah.
So I stick to the lakes mostly. But even the lakes, you never know when you're going to go through. I was ice fishing with a buddy once. There's like 3 feet of ice, maybe 4. And just out of nowhere, he's walking. He goes right through. And he was struggling to get out. Like there was another guy there, and he had to get a long stick so we could reach it out to him, and so he could get himself out because he wasn't able to. So it's a little scary. So yeah, especially if it's dead cold.
And what was it that?
We were on a little point on a lake that people do ice fish. I wonder if someone had drilled a hole there. And there was tons of snow on the ice too. Sometimes that weight of the snow pushes water up through any crack in the snow, right? And that can actually widen a hole. Like when I go on extended winter trips, if I'm base camping, I'll drill a hole in the ice for water, and then I'll bury it in snow, right? So to keep it insulated, so I don't have to drill a hole every time, and then I just dig it out next time I want water. Sometimes by the end of the trip, that hole is wider because the water is upwelling and melting the ice.
So you think it was just an upwell that was potentially caused by someone that had drilled a hole there, and then the snow disguised it?
I think so.
Yeah,
because it wasn't shallow enough for it to be like a spring, I don't think, or there was no semblance of a current. So yeah, that's my best guess. But
he just stepped in the wrong spot.
Yeah, we were all walking around there. It was just like Minesweeper, you just clicking around, and then suddenly you hit a bomb, and weird. You just have no idea.
And so what did you do? Like, what was the protocol, and how cold was it outside?
It was safely -20, so it was a pretty cold day. And we were in the backcountry. We got sleds, used snowmobiles to get in there. And I gave him my sweater because I was plenty warm. And we got a fire going, and then as soon as he got warm enough, we got out of there. That was our day.
No
he was we were actually there to rescue my snowmobile, which had broken down on the trail on a trip. Back, this was in 2022, my first winter with a snowmobile, which was a test. I did not take to it. I bought an old Tundra model. It's supposed to be really good in the backcountry. And it wasn't for me. Canoes and snowshoes, that's my jam. Motors, I'm not inclined. If you have the skill, you feel confident in taking that machinery into the backcountry. But
I used to ride those old Tundras. Like they're easier to fix, but they're old and they just don't really have the power. Like, so you cannot, the only good thing is that they're pretty light, that you can like move them. But yeah, when I used to work up in mineral exploration up in northern Quebec and stuff, you'd be riding along and you'd be like, oh, let's try to get through there, and you couldn't like hit deep snow and pin the throttle and bomb through. You just get right stuck. You know what I mean? And they like, it's not like, like now I have a Scandic with a 20-inch wide track, and it's got an articulating track. So the track like lifts a bit so you can reverse without burying the machine. And I just like, when I want to pack down like deep snow, like, snow like mid-thigh to my mid-thigh, I just, ride back and forth right on top of it, pack it down for the tent. Like, it's like a total game changer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And with the Tundra, if you get stuck in slush too and you're alone, like, God help you. I spent hours.
There's a lot of, I call it snowmobile anxiety.
Big time. Yeah. And that was what got me away from it. It was like, took away this simplicity that I crave out there in the backcountry.
I also feel like you don't, like there's something to when you turn around, and I've done some big, sled trips up in the Arctic, and
yeah, you
did one up in Moosey, and this year I did mostly like all like snowmobile, winter camping, ice fishing trips, which when you have the kids, and you're bringing all this stuff, it's like makes a big difference. And me and Tori have done some big treks just carrying the kids, and also to get to my camp, which is 20K away with the family, like you kind of have to have it, but you don't have that same respect for the distances, and the small things that you see along the way. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly how I phrased it. When I did this in a video, I was describing my thought process of just not being attached to the snowmobile. Yeah. You're just blazing by a trail. Right. Everything's just whipping by in your peripheral. You can't hear the woodpeckers or a stream trickling along the trail or any of that. So that's what I'm out there for.
A good, like, so for me, and not to knock people that are into, just trail riding. Tori took me on a huge trail riding trip. It was pretty freaking grueling. Like, she planned the whole thing. I actually whipped off my machine. The roads were starting to melt. Part of the trail part of the trail went onto a road, and I went up to try to onto a snowbank to cool my machine off, going really slow. But the snowbank was really hard, and I wasn't expecting it. I just whipped off, boom, right onto my shoulder.
That's what happened to your shoulder.
Yes, and the snowmobiles are so tall nowadays that you're falling further, and I'm just like, oh. Tori was ahead of me. She didn't even know. And I pulled up. She's like, where were you? I'm like, I got really hurt.
I fell.
And I was okay, right? But, that was cool. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I just find it to be, undeniably amazing utilitarian. That's why I have a Scandic, right? Because it's just like haul a cord of wood out to, your a firewood out to camp, and, but these kinds of tasks, right? For that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just, there's something about, the beauty of just getting out there, and okay. So would you agree to this? So it's nature. Everyone knows nature makes you feel good, and everybody knows that exercise makes you feel good. So when you combine exercise and nature,
exactly,
that's why our ancestors, they say didn't deal with depression and all these stuff, because they're getting exercise in nature like all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. I just did a 12-day trip in Quetico in winter, and I was saying that in the video how we've had happiness, the formula for happiness all along, and we've abandoned it for all our modern conveniences, which I wouldn't give up now, of course. It's not like I'm denouncing them, but a simple life out there with like a community living off the land. I think we'd all be a lot happier.
It's like
the world would be simpler.
It would be simpler.
No geopolitics.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It would just be like the form of communism that works.
Yeah.
I remember when we were kids, my cousin Brad, we're like, okay, we're packing for a camping trip, and okay, Brad's got 4 pillows, so he's got pillows for everyone, so I don't have to worry about pillows. I'll get this, and then we show up, and he's like, hey, give me back my pillows. I'm like, you brought 4 pillows just for yourself? Like, that's not how this works, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? And it's sort of like we were just kids, right? But it's like an unknown thing. Things are shared there, and there's challenges. But
now if you go on a trip with buddies, are you sharing much gear, or do you bring your own stuff?
Well, a lot of the time, now that we're often soloing, and I think sometimes that works too when people are trying to shoot their own unique YouTube channels, that people kind of, for videos that people solo their own gear. So we're kind of, self-sufficient, but there's also me and my brother will split a tent, we'll bring one stove, you know what I mean? But so we're doing that.
That I've died laughing at times when you and Ted squeeze into what looks to be a 2-man tent sometimes. Like, you're both
it's a
way
3-man, but yeah.
It's
You
guys need to bring a 4-man. It'd be an extra pound.
Yeah. And you know what we do? We sleep head to toe.
Yeah.
Which is way better. So we're not sleeping head to head.
Shoulders.
But it makes it way better. But when that's our attempt to travel light. And that's what we do. I remember Xander, when we bumped into him Algonquin, he was just couldn't believe that we were both sleeping in that tent.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's nuts.
Yeah.
4-man.
Yeah.
It's worth it. I'm not an ultralight camper.
Yeah.
I like to, I'm reasonable, but I like to be comfortable out there. And when people are trying to cut off a pound here and there for such important things like the tent, the shelter.
Yeah.
I'd rather bring an extra pound of tent
right,
out of like a 100+ pound load.
Yeah, agreed. Easy. Especially up on trips, which I want to hear about too. The one that you did in Nunavut, trips like that where you might be dealing with like days of heavy rain. Mm-hmm. There's not much firewood, if any, to get warm. Like having a big tent where you can be this thing. You don't have to be worried about being pushed up against the walls, and you might have to spend a day in there. 100%. Like I would never do that little small tent on like one of me and Ted's like Arctic trips, right?
Yeah, we actually brought 2 tents on that trip just as a precaution because we had no portages on the trip, right? Because we were just going around a massive lake. So we figured, why not? It's 4 or 5 extra pounds in the tent for that security, and our first tent leaked. So it was a nice thing that we did.
Totally.
Yeah. It was this every little seam on the tent that had a loop sewn into it was dripping. $800 tent too.
Huh.
So, yeah.
You want to throw the brand under the bus?
Yeah, Sea to Summit.
Yeah, really? Yeah. You make good stuff.
I know. I always thought I was a big fan, but I had their pad recently, the X-Therm, I think. No, that's Thermarest. Anyway, I can't remember which one it was, but it's like an R7 pad, and it was colder than my R5 pad. So I don't know what's going on with them. I usually
their compression
like
sacks were great.
Yeah, they're good for that, or their liner, sleeping bag liner, stuff like that. I've had
all
mine
I've really
for like 10
used
years.
Their compression sacks, and they're wicked.
Yeah.
So I can't really speak
them
to
and like Seal Line are sort of go-tos for that.
Seal Line
has
has stepped it up over the years too. Like I remember their first roll top like day bag sort of things were just like always leaking and stuff. But now they're full packs, and their full dry bag packs are pretty heavy duty, man. Like that's what I use ever since Eureka discontinued their canoe packs.
Yeah, I use the Mech Slog.
Yeah,
that's a pretty common one too.
Good one.
I've just bought a new map case. I used to use Seal Line, and I just got the Recreational Barrel Works one, like Kevin Callan's buddy. He makes those. What kind of map case are you using?
So actually that's funny because Andy came over here to drop some stuff off to me when he was in the area, and I showed him a map case that I'd made. And he's like, and he like took it and looked at it. I made one out of like, the stuff that's on like a boat covers windows.
Yeah.
So I bought some of that, and I like
welded
it. I like melted it all together, and then like reinforced it with like shoe goo and used industrial Velcro and rolled up the top, and then I glued webbing along the edges with loops for carabiners. Right. So it was like, submersible, like wicked map case. And Andy's like, this is a great idea. We talked about it, and he's like, you should use waterproof zipper. I'm like, why does no one use that? I always hated the ones that were only one-sided, because you couldn't flip it.
Yeah, why would you do that?
I don't know,
right?
That's silly. Maybe if you're just sea kayaking and you're using 1 to 250s.
It's on the deck,
Yeah. So, anyways, he said. Then next thing you know, he came out with that. So I was, which is awesome. So I use that or the other. I forget the other kind. Maybe they're Seal Lines.
AquaQuest.
Not
I've had
AquaQuest.
theirs, and
it's a
the
roll
quality
top.
Wasn't there.
Those are the ones that you push in the things and turn them, or do they have a roll top?
I think they were Ziploc style.
Okay.
Which is not my
terrible.
preference. Yeah.
Those never work.
They're way too hard to get up, especially if you have cold fingers.
They just leak is the other thing.
Yeah, if they're not perfectly sealed.
Yeah.
So
I didn't even know. I thought they leaked even though they were perfectly sealed.
Yeah. I always bring paper maps, so still some people just use their phone, and the old timers will hate that, but I like both. Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's no reason not to bring both.
I'm almost always using 1 to 250, and then I'll maybe sometimes if I'm going on like a massive span of water, I might break out I always use 1 to 50s, and sometimes I'll break out the 1 to 250s if I'm on like a huge body of water, or just for like kind of route planning, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But especially when it's a whitewater river, it's really nice to have the 1 to 50s.
Oh,
but sometimes when you're
50s are useless.
Yeah, exactly. And then sometimes when you have the 1 to 250s, if you're on like a long, fast flowing river, they can actually kind of be better because you can just get a perception of like where you are in relation to the end of your trip better. But most of the time I'm using 1 to 50s too, Yeah.
Speaking of Nunavut, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Can we talk about pew-pews? Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't want to mess up your monetization.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So we're looking to buy a shotgun. Erin got her PAL.
Okay,
For Arctic trips. We didn't have it on the trip that we did in Nunavut, but the chances of us running into a grizzly were pretty low there. Yeah. But we got the bug, the subarctic bug, right? Like once you go up there, it's just another world. The wildlife and fishing are just insane.
Yeah.
So we want to get one. Do you have a recommendation, and along with a waterproof case?
Yeah, there's a really good company that makes. So if you're searching for a waterproof case, it's called a Scabbard is the way that you pronounce it.
Okay.
So you could shotgun waterproof Scabbard. I use one. I forget the company. Maybe Novar. It's called. They're made in Nome, Alaska. They're a roll top dry bag that's got some padding in there. They float. They got a good shoulder strap. Oh, it's awesome, you know.
Okay.
Some of the other ones don't have any actual padding, and you're just relying on like the air inside it to float it. And then you know, I would get probably a shotgun that's like, you know, never get a semi-automatic. I would say get something that's like easy enough to you know, that you could like disassemble to some extent. So I always go with a pump, because then you get 3 shots, whereas a double barrel or single barrel you only get 2 shots, even though, you know, there's less moving parts. But yeah, just something that's like, you know, reliable. A lot of people say, oh, bring like a short barrel, because when you're, you know, if a bear, polar bear is attacking you in the tent, a shorter bear is better, which is true. But then you don't really have something that in an emergency you could use to, like, you know, in a survival situation, you could use to get a goose or something like that.
Okay.
Did you see a lot of geese when you were up there?
No.
At some times,
it's ptarmigan.
Ptarmigan, yeah, because at some times, I remember me and my brother, when we were up in the Arctic, there's just thousands of nesting Canada geese.
Yeah.
And the foxes trying to steal the eggs and the chick, like just like in a documentary on, like, you know, Nat Geo documentary, right?
The scale of wildlife up there just puts ours to shame.
Well,
you know?
tell us, it really does. You know, it makes you kind of realize how much we've lost down here.
Absolutely.
Because we don't realize how good the fishing once was, or you know what I mean, when it wasn't abused and when there wasn't such a large population, and you know. But share a little bit about just that trip that you did up to Nunavut, and the logistics, and you know exactly where you went and what it was.
Yeah, so we had like a 20-hour drive to northern Manitoba, past Thompson, to this tiny town called Lynn Lake, and we were just hoping our car didn't break down there, because I don't know how you would get a repair or get the parts. It would take a long time. Yeah. So then we took about 325 kilometer flight to the bottom of Nunavut, so just past the Manitoba border, into this massive lake called Nualton, and a good history there. Farley Mowat did a lot of work there.
No Man's River.
Yep, No Man's River, and Never Cry Wolf. A lot of his works come from there, actually. So there's historical stuff that we're interested in, but most of all, we wanted the chance to see some different wildlife, including caribou, muskox are possible up there, and then lots of things that are possible here too, like bears and wolverines, although wolverines are super unlikely here. So we had low hopes for the caribou herds, because we were told we probably didn't have the right timing, might see a few stragglers. And we were, I think it was day 11, we hadn't seen virtually a mammal at all. We'd seen 1 or 2 otters together, and we were thinking, okay, we missed it, you know. And then the next morning we saw 1 female caribou, and we were so stoked. We were just like, yes, we got one, yes. And then it just kept building from there. The next day we saw like a cow and calf, and then the calf actually came up to us like Bambi style, like it wanted us to take it with it, like pet it, and we were trying to push it away because we didn't want to mess up, you know, have the mother abandon it or something like that. And then it just kept building. We finally saw some bucks with huge antlers, and we were just on cloud 9. But then on the evening of day 16 or so, of 22-day trip, something like that, we're just like cooking up dinner and getting ready to settle into the tent. We didn't even like the campsite, really. We were just sort of stuck because of the wind. And a stream of caribou starts coming. And as it builds, there's like easily 1,000, maybe 2,000 caribou rolling past our campsite, and then staying and grazing right there. So
Wow.
It was on. It was
that's
just
the you got some
imagine
wicked footage of that too.
Yeah. Like, how could you not? It was golden hour too, and there was like some cloud cover and a rainbow over there, and it was one of those magic moments. It's once in a lifetime.
And so you're basically paddling along the shore of this massive lake that's completely like in the is it even taiga forest at that point?
It's
or are you
taiga
in the Barrens?
transitioning to Barrens.
Right.
So that was something we wanted to experience too, was that transition. So,
yeah, and because it looked like it was pretty much just barren lands from the part I saw anyways.
Yeah. Where the caribou were, it was mostly.
Yeah, and so they were barren ground caribou then?
Yep.
Yeah, and then how many did you see?
There was at least 1,000, and that herd could have been 2,000. But over the course of the trip, we probably saw a few hundred at other times too. So when you're seeing anything in the thousands, that's just.
And that's I think for anybody that is into paddling, canoeing wild rivers, caribou migration. Unfortunately, it's just less and less common to be able to see. You hear all these old stories. People would have to stop their canoes and wait for 3 days for the caribou herd to go by. You don't hear about that happening very often anymore on these barren land trips. But yeah, that is super cool. Yeah, and then and you were on, what's the lake called again? Newellton Lake, and you're paddling mostly along the following the coast basically. Yep. And were you trying to circumnavigate the entire
essentially
lake?
as much as we could see of it? It was our honeymoon trip too. We got married the fall before.
Yeah,
so
congrats.
Thank you. Yeah. So we wanted to keep it honeymoon friendly, like nothing like grueling. We didn't want to get into like the really nasty days. You're already going to get into some nasty weather in the subarctic anyway, and we were worried about that. I read in like Adam Schultz's books, for example, that in August that's when we went. The wind can really kick up. You can start getting almost wintry conditions. And so we were pretty worried about that, having never been up to the subarctic before, especially on
such a big lake. Yeah, like you could be windbound for days, huge waves.
The one thing we had was we were getting dropped off and picked up by float plane. So even if we got stranded somewhere, we could get picked up. However, we were hoping to make it back to where we got dropped off, because it's a very expensive flight.
Yes,
and 100 kilometers difference is maybe $1,000.
Yeah.
So we wanted to get back south as far as possible by the end. So
I find those trips where you're relying on someone else to pick you up can be more stressful.
Definitely.
Me and my brother are basically, weathered in at the mouth of the Hood River on the Arctic Ocean. Yep. We had to pack light. There's no fish anywhere around there. We have like no food, hardly any food left.
Low,
and the float plane can't get us. And the float plane can't get us, right?
Yeah.
And then finally we see it, but we were trying to message on our inReach. We didn't get a message. And finally we hear the float plane break through the clouds. They do a big loop and then fly away. And we're like, oh no, it's too shallow. They can't land here. And we're like, oh no, we're screwed, right? And then otherwise it's like a very long paddle to Kugluktuk. And anyways, he ended up landing out of sight and taxied up to the next bank over. But it was like pretty, kind of that situation where you can't be self-reliant,
Exactly. Yeah. Which is half the fun out there is having that sense of self-reliance. Yeah. If I'm doing a shuttle or a plane, I would much rather have it at the start.
Yes.
Get that out of the equation. Yeah. And then, hopefully go back to end your trip at a parking area.
Yeah, some of those rivers that go up to Hudson Bay and stuff, some of them, I think you do have to get a float plane pickup from the end, because you can access the beginning by road, I think. If you do the Windigo, Fawn, Severn, you can get in there, the Pickle Lake Road. But then once you get to the coast, you have to get a pickup, right?
Yeah.
So, bring some extra food.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as Ontarians, it's very tempting to go up to the Hudson Bay coast and all those rivers. Some of them are still relatively not dammed, for instance, or messed up too badly. But once you get out to the coast, you're now having to deal with tides, salt water, and potentially polar bears.
Yeah.
So that has put me off of coast trips
Well,
so
I mean,
far.
Now there's also a lot of those rivers that the water blows, the wind blows in from the coast. So a lot of them have pretty good headwinds a lot of the time too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
and
and
the
then
current meeting
it can be, it can be challenging. I paddled along the James Bay coast, from the Hurricane estuary back to the Moose River, and it wasn't too bad, but time and tide waits for no man. Like, you're not going anywhere. You're waiting for the tide to come in forever. The bugs are so bad. I ended up portaging my stuff out into the tidal flats to get away from the bugs and just sitting there as the water slowly came in. And then it's so shallow, you can't even really paddle. You have to just push along the bottom, right?
Yeah.
But that's actually pretty efficient. And, but it was a cool experience for sure as a moonscape. Yeah. But yeah, there's polar bears that are coming more and more inland from what I've heard now too. So it's a different world.
Yeah, they're losing the ice and they're just desperate. And that's the worst thing is when you run into a desperate animal.
Yeah. Right. In that area too, because that's the furthest southerly part of their range, right? So anyways.
I remember Alex and Eric from Northern Scavenger, they were doing a trip up, I can't remember what it was, Matagami, I don't know. And anyway, they got to the coast and they saw these massive bear prints in the sand, and they were going to paddle along the coast, but then they decided, no, let's get a boat pickup and get the heck out of here.
Yeah, I actually bumped it. So they were in Moose Factory when I was in Moosonee. Because I just come down the North French, but we didn't want to meet up because even though we'd both been in the bush for a long time, because it was during COVID and we didn't want to intermingle, or they didn't want to go over to Moose Factory and stuff like that. So we didn't meet up. And then, so I was chatting with him on the phone, and he said, yeah, we saw these huge polar bear prints. But as I paddled up to Moosonee, I saw Mike Ranta's canoe turned up on someone's lawn. And it was absolutely hammering rain. I'm like, Mike Rant had no idea. Who the heck else's canoe would that be? And it was literally just across the street from the person's house I was staying at. So so anyways, the next morning about 9:30, I walk over there and Ranta's gone. And Ranta had made it, the most time I've ever heard, had actually made it up to the Hurricane estuary in 1 day, which is not even possible. I don't know. He must have just hit the tides right, or guy's just an animal. Yes. But I think he bumped into Alex out there. And
what a small world.
I know, right? Yeah. And anyways, he ended up saying he saw the bear and it was just a massive black bear. Oh, so So apparently it was just the biggest black bear Ranta says he'd ever
That's
seen.
Crazy. It was
if it was the same bear, because I've heard a story right on Netatishi Point, which is halfway between the Moose River and the Hurricane estuary, that a guy was stuck. He has a camp there. He was stuck for 2 days with no water on the roof of his shed with a polar bear milling around him, in that area. So I don't think they were unnecessarily scared,
Yeah. And that's hence why I'm asking you about the shotgun. Because if we want to get into these trips, it's just, especially when you're going with your partner, you don't want to have disaster. If you're going with buddies, maybe a bit more reckless. But and normally we're bear spray advocates. We're all about bear spray. Statistically, it's better than a firearm.
It is, yeah.
But if you're getting into polar bear country, no, you absolutely need a firearm. And grizzly, you're towing the line where you might want a firearm.
And just take both. The bear spray is good because you always have it on you.
Bear spray is a must always. For sure.
Absolutely.
There's no reason not to. It's so easy to just have on your belt.
Agreed. So you want to hear something cool? Okay, so that area that you were at is the headwaters of Thelwiaza. I don't know how to say
Fluieza
River. Yeah. So that is at the end of No Man's River, the river that Farley Mowat went down in that with that old broken down Lockhart kicker and that wood canvas canoe. So remember how he was up there with I think Dr. D.D. McDonald, and they were gathering samples. Basically, they were just shooting everything they saw. Like birds and little mice and voles and what was it?
Poisoning them too to collect the specimens.
Okay, and collecting and preserving them.
Which Mowat took exception to.
Right.
Yeah, the other scientist was just, he would do anything to get the specimens and finish the job.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty. I don't know if they do that anymore. But anyways,
I hope not.
I was at the ROM, so I went to Toronto. My uncle passed. We went to his funeral. He's in the military, and they had it down at RMI or whatever in downtown Toronto. So we took him to the ROM to see the dinosaurs afterwards. And I went past this one exhibit and I saw those freaking, it turned out not to be the exact same one, but from the exact same push with the Royal Ontario Zoological Survey, from the exact same years where Mowat was up on, I'll show you a picture afterwards, was up on collecting those samples at Windy Post, right in the area that you canoed, where Mowat and McDonald. So, and all the handwriting is so good, the names and the years all preserved. So they at first I'm looking at these, I'm like, could they have been like from Mowat and McDonald? And it would be worth a closer look because I didn't read all the tags, but they all have little tags, all these little sparrows, those tiny little mice. Remember how he's explaining that so I saw one of those mice. I'm like, that's got to be his. And for some reason, this thing just caught my eye. But yeah, so during those same years, and one of them was from a river on the Arctic watershed up by, not too far from Moosonee, in right around the same time. So, that was a big push by, I guess, the Zoological Survey to collect all these things. And there's a bunch of them on display at the ROM that were taken right in that same push. So I don't know. I just thought that was kind of neat because that was just in my mind just last weekend.
I love reading about that era because it just seemed like there was so many unknowns in the world back then, and versus now everything's satellite mapped, right? I was reading this book about John Ray. I don't know about if you know him.
Explorer.
Sort of unsung. Probably arguably discovered the Northwest Passage, the last linkage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that's, some people credit it to Franklin, but Franklin was a bit of a
turkey, wasn't it? Sorry,
in my opinion.
Franklin died doing it though, didn't he?
Yeah.
But it was Amundsen that's the guy who did it first. But technically, in one ship, but technically Robert McClure did it first because his boat got iced in for like 2 years on Banks Island in Mercy Bay. And then they had to abandon ship and just started walking east across like pack ice and bumped into another expedition by chance. And then they couldn't make it any further west and turned around and went the other way. So technically McClure was the first person to do it.
However, there's a lot of disagreements about this. Like people are on teams, right? Like, some people love Franklin, some people hate him. Some people think it was this guy or that guy. But
I think I'm Team Amundsen.
Yeah,
because McClure seemed kind of mean,
Having just read John Ray's story, I'm on Team Ray, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, very good guy. Really used the locals and worked with them and treated them with respect. The Inuit, that is.
Yeah.
Versus a lot of them did not. So, and he benefited from it. He was able to overwinter there and on meager supplies. Most of them brought in canned goods to last them years. He was mostly living off the land with just a little pemmican and stuff like that. So,
wow,
he was quite the woodsman.
What was his route?
He did a lot of overland snowshoe routes too. So he did some sea routes and a mix. But anyway, there was just a little piece that was missing in the Northwest Passage that he essentially discovered, or he was told about it by the Inuit and reported on it. Anyway, Franklin's widow, Lady Jane Franklin, I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yes. Yeah.
So she was a real force in Britain at the time, and she really tried to bury John Ray and destroy his legacy because she wanted her husband and her estate essentially to benefit from being the discoverers. But anyway, the reason I brought that up, we were talking about
it'd be like jealous of other outdoor YouTubers.
Yeah, that's what it was at the time. People wrote books, and sometimes the books were very successful.
Right,
that was big in Britain back in the day. Yeah. The whole Arctic exploration. They brought back the beaver pelts for the hats, and it was a craze. Yeah. But anyway, at the back of this, or the front of this book about John Ray, it's a map of the Northwest Passage, and it's just what they knew, and then part of it is blacked out, and it just says unknown in 1859 or whatever the date was. And I was just so captivated by that. Yeah. I saw that's so cool, to have unknowns. We go on canoe trips and whatnot, and we just want to lay eyes on it. It's been discovered and mapped and everything.
Yeah, it's just the sense rediscovering.
Of the yeah, exactly. So we're discovering it. We're fulfilling our own imaginations, voids, right? So it's sort of similar, but I love the idea that things are undiscovered still. Yeah, we're sort of losing that. But.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and we definitely are. But it still kind of exists to some extent. When Collins and McClure were in the Western Arctic, they made first contact with McClure's party made first contact with a group of Copper Inuit near Cape Ptarmigan. And this is all like in their book, in his book, Northern Copper Inuit by Richard. I think I should double check the name, but anyway, so he said that at the time he gave a pen and paper to an Inuit girl, and she drew him the best map of the Arctic coast known to the British Royal Navy at the time, and also drew a map of Victoria Island, which before that they just called it Victoria Land. When Ted and I were coming down from the Cujo, we actually found a stone cairn there and looked like a cache right in that same area, right? And we reported it to the Museum of Civilizations, now the Museum of History, and they said, despite many forays in the area, we somehow missed this. And that's probably because we were traveling in a similar way, right? They would have been sledging across the ice, but they're kind of traveling, in a similar way. Me and Ted thought that would be a good area to stop, and we found this thing there. But I didn't really know what at the time. We knew it wasn't Inuit. Oh, maybe some explorers left this. But afterwards, this research, I'm like, I wonder if there's that map in the stone cairn. But what would you leave in a stone cairn? Could you imagine anything more beneficial to leave in a stone cairn, in a little cylinder in the middle, right?
Yeah.
But then why wouldn't McClure and Collinson have mentioned it in their journals? So then it's like, well, then who built it? Well, and then it gets into argument that is potentially driven by political biases.
Big time.
You know what I mean? Which is when it really gets fun,
Yeah, it's all a fascinating web up there.
Yeah.
The history and the people and the politics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that was pretty cool. So that's not really something that I've discovered. Like there's other explorers there. And of course, indigenous people have, like I saw some posts saying there was some British girl, and no knock on her, but she was like, I was the first kind of woman to do Akshayuk Pass. And then somebody sort of like, well, people have done, it's called Akshayuk was a guy, the Inuit who found it. I think like indigenous people also were obviously explorers and explored different areas and saw this kind of stuff, and all that. So, you have to give them credit as opposed to the old, like, we were, the British, we were the first people to ever do this sort of thing, which, is just kind of like their idea of nation building history, why we should own it, right? So I would say that in general, unfortunately, there's kind of very little when it comes to unknown mapping routes, and you know what I mean? Like you just log on to Google Earth nowadays, right?
Yeah, the best you can hope for is that there's a little bit of a trip report so you can use it as a base, but not much more than that. And then you have something to build off of, some knowledge and information, but you don't know too much. You have that sense of exploration. Yeah,
I like to just use the 1 to 250s, and sometimes it takes way longer when you have someone's full notes on a river, or like a whitewater river. And to be honest with you, I found it makes the video worse. Because when I don't know, I walk up to it, I'm like, oh no, I can't do this. Right. As opposed to just, well, I got this coming up.
Yeah.
So when I actually don't know what's there, it makes my videos better.
For sure.
Because I'm kind of like have to guess, and you kind of really, it takes way longer, and it can be more of a pain in the ass, but it makes the whole thing more of an adventure.
Yeah. I think compared to like a trip in Algonquin or something, maybe that's not as compelling. People still enjoy the nature aspect, but there's not the real sense of adventure and unknowns. Yeah.
Is that what you liked about going up to Nunavut on that trip? How many days were you there, by the way?
22 days. We planned for about 3 weeks and brought a little extra food. But
you like those big water trips?
I do love big water.
Nipigon too, right?
Nipigon, and I love paddling Superior. No portage just has its benefits, you
right.
You can pack really comfortably, and you don't have to haul all your stuff over land. but I love a mix, you know. I love a mix. Like next week, I'm hoping to get on Superior to start the season because it ices out a little before inland lakes up there. Often, well, sometimes a lot before. So that's like my little jumping off point for the season.
Yeah, what was that winter one you did during last winter that was that crazy warm winter? And you were paddling on Superior in like February or something like that?
Yeah, that's right. A couple of years ago. Almost double-edged. Like I felt conflicted about it because Superior is warming with the planet and faster than a lot of other areas. And it's such a beautiful ecosystem because it's so deep and cold. It hasn't been subject to algae blooms and stuff, but that's now coming on.
Really?
Yeah, and things like that. Zebra mussels.
So you're seeing there's zebra mussels there now?
I think they're working their way up, but algae blooms, yes, and that had been a thing in the past. I was on Lake of the Woods last fall, and huge lake up in northwestern Ontario, for those who don't know, and it's a bit of a tourist destination. Lots of fishing camps and cottages there. So I went in October, hoping it would be a bit quieter. And little did I know, that's actually when the algae bloom, which is quite bad there, peaks. I'm not used to having to deal with algae blooms in northwestern Ontario because most of the lakes are still pretty pure. But that one, there's a lot of agriculture runoff from the Rainy River. So you have all this excess phosphorus and nitrogen, which really amps up the algae. So it was just nasty. And so I got, 80 kilometers into my trip and started to realize this was an algae bloom. And
what does it look like?
It's just like kind of like a green scum on the surface and even below the surface floating. If it's a really bad bloom, it's just like it's pervasive through the water.
It doesn't make the water like you can get sick if you swim in it
Very
and
much
die
so.
even, right?
Yeah, you can get quite sick. Dogs can
Is that
easily die.
blue-green algae?
Yeah, blue-green. Yeah, not just some algae, I'm sure, are just fine, but blue-green algae, it can kill dogs and if they ingest it. And it's really nasty stuff. And I saw otters swimming in it and whatnot, and I just felt so bad for them. So
Do you think would it affect the otters?
I read a little bit about it, and I didn't find anything too conclusive. Like it might affect them. It's not going to affect them like a dog, where it can be very fatal. So anyway, I'm sure it's not benefiting many creatures in that ecosystem. But back to your question about paddling Superior in February. I just felt very conflicted about it. You know, it's like it felt so rejuvenating to be back in the canoe because I'm all winter.
But you're like, this shouldn't be like this.
It shouldn't be like this. Like that bay is normally frozen right over, and it should be minus 20, minus 30. Yeah. So it's concerning stuff too, but
absolutely,
kind of beyond us peasants.
Yeah.
I try to you just want to own all these problems, and especially if you're a conservationist. Now is a pretty awful time because there's so much going on in the world, and the environment is just getting pushed right down to the bottom, and we're going to pay the price for that. But the Ontario government just introduced a bill to basically gut the Endangered Species Act. And
didn't they already gut that, or is that
it was
just
already
national?
It was already really hurting, but now it's getting to get worse, and it's like I'm not anti-mining or forestry. I worked in forestry for 3 years, but all things have to be done responsibly. And there's the 7 generations concept in Indigenous culture, right? You're thinking about 7 generations of life based around your actions, and our society doesn't live that way. We're lucky if we live 7 weeks. Right? We're thinking so short-sighted. Yeah. And a lot of people are just trying to get by, and they can't commit the brain, the capacity to dealing with these conceptual issues that are in the future and seem distant. I get that. But I feel like we're going to pay the price maybe in our lifetimes in a big way.
And that kind of gets back to what we were talking about, is when you go to these places where, modern man hasn't made such a large impact, right? So one of the things that is the killer of wilderness is a road, right? Yeah. How far are you from a road? And when you're completely away from the road system, you're going to have, maybe people that hunt on snowmobile in the winter, that go in that are harvesting food, and the odd canoeist, maybe some, mining exploration work by helicopter. but that's it. And when you go and see those places, people don't realize how much, because nobody lives there, nobody's been there, so nobody realizes how much we've already lost here. So when it comes to being a conservationist, like what you mentioned, what's your baseline, right? If your baseline is, Nunavut, right?
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
Right.
And so people, when they've never seen that, they can't even comprehend. They don't realize that every single tree has been cut down or resulting forest fires because of poor logging practices in the entire Great Lakes watershed, other than, Lake Superior, where they just cut along the rivers for pulp or whatever. But every single tree has been cut here and pushed down the rivers, and the forests look totally different than they would have for the most part at one time. And, the fishery, the fish species are different, and the numbers of fish are way different, and all kinds of things in the ecosystem are completely different. And I just think that it's easier to not realize that you're making an impact on top of multiple impacts that have already been made. People don't kind of factor that in. Does that make sense?
Oh, big time. Yeah. And I grew up in Toronto, and I was always starved for nature. I used to go down to the Humber River and get my canoe in there and fish in there.
Did you ever catch any salmon in there?
I accidentally hooked one once.
Wow.
Snagged, and I released it, of course. No, I didn't have. I caught maybe like the odd bass there, but I didn't have much success. I'm not a good salmon angler at all.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah,
right?
It is hard. Yeah, and the water is very turbid there, so you can't see much. But anyway, that was my oasis in the city. I lived in the West End, and
the valleys in Toronto are definitely a good escape, because a lot of them aren't manicured.
Yeah. The trees are old, and the rivers, they have those dams for the lamprey eels, the walls. So the salmon have to jump over it, but the lampreys can't. Right. So they're not exactly free flowing, but anyway, it's the best you can get in the city, and I'm glad that it still has some semblance of nature left. Yeah. But I was always starved for it in Toronto. So
and that's but it was fishing that kind of got you in, because your channel used to be called Backcountry Angling, right?
That's right. Yeah. Fishing was my obsession. I started when I was a little kid, and any opportunity I had, and I based my life around it. I quit jobs to have more fishing time. I studied marketing at TMU in Toronto. Cool. Yeah. That was my first career. I did that for 5 years. And quit, and then did a road trip in my grandpa's minivan, which I inherited it from him, an old 98 Ford Windstar in champagne gold. Just like a total grandpa van. I just loved it. It enabled so much for me. I could.
Minivans are the most underrated freaking vehicle out there.
I love them.
Yeah. Especially you get an all-wheel drive one.
They make all-wheel drive.
There's only the Toyota Sienna and the Chrysler Pacifica are the only two. Obviously, I know my minivans, buddy. I got 2 kids, still don't have a minivan though. But yeah, underrated.
You can move in them. You can sleep, like move a house. You can sleep in them and
fit
take
a whole
the kids.
Couch in it.
Take the hockey team, a couch, 2x4s and everything. Yeah, they're the best. But
especially if you get jacked up leaf springs, which I did before. I used to drive an Astrovan. People made fun of me. I'm like, this thing has a locking rear differential and jacked up leaf springs. I actually had to pull my buddy's Durango out. It was stuck on the lake, and he was like so embarrassed. I'm like, yeah. Anyways,
yeah, and those like Sprinter vans, those are amazing.
Yeah,
I would love to get one. Maybe later in life. Right now, I'm too addicted to being outdoors, but that'd be a great way to tour around.
Yeah. So is that kind of what you did? So you're in Toronto. You got into this marketing thing, and fishing was kind of your draw to get into the backcountry. So it wasn't necessarily just let's get on a canoe. Oh, let's try fishing. It was like, I can take a canoe and I could get to these places where the fishing is like way better.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So growing up, we did car camping sometimes, but never backcountry. I took my dad on his first backcountry trip. But the first time I did a backcountry trip is in the Massasauga. not far from here. Yeah. The inland side, went with a couple buddies who had also just done like maybe one trip. So they invited me, knowing that I love fishing. The fishing was out of control. It was so much better than anything I'd have ever experienced before. Bass. So I caught a 6-pound smallmouth there, and I was like, whoa. So I was immediately hooked to the backcountry. If it wasn't for fishing, I probably never would have found this passion. Whereas now fishing is totally in the back seat. I like fishing as I'm on the go, but I'm not like obsessed. I don't base my life around it. It's about the adventure and the experience and the peace.
Yeah, it's about all the elements, really, isn't it?
It is. It's a lot of things together.
Like if I was up on the Hood River and some of these places and I just wanted to camp out there for the week, I probably could have caught a 40, 50-pound lake trout.
Yeah.
But like me and my brother were almost just like, oh no, it's another huge fish. Now my brother caught one that drug him back across. We were trying to do an open water crossing. I'm like, don't even troll here, because if you catch a big one, you're not going to be able to land it. Yeah. You don't even try landing those fish in a canoe in the middle of a lake like that, right? Yeah. And you get it up to the boat and you pull the hook out and use Barbless, right? And the fish drug my brother a kilometer away. And he was actually trying to land, his net wasn't big enough, and he felt all bad. I'm like, dude, you had it to the boat, like, whatever. But, like, his wrist was sore, his rod was jacked. It's almost like, that's awesome, but it's like, don't even fish, and then when you need food, fish, and maybe catch a nice big one and do a safe release. But it almost was like, and the fishing is so good in those places, it's almost like you don't want to mess it up. It's just so untouched and perfect that at some places I'm like, I don't even want to cast here. This is too
sacred,
perfect, too sacred. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I used to be pure catch and release, and I didn't really want to keep them and clean them and everything.
You don't do the fillet and release like me.
But now I'm moving to more of sustenance fishing, not exclusively, but I only fish if I'm in a position where I'm willing to keep the fish, because I'm using single barbless and I'm keeping the water, rubberized net, wet hands, everything.
Wet hands. That's one. I haven't been doing that. Like obviously sometimes, and I got in a comment, you got to use wet hands, and some guy was like really mean to me about it, and I looked it up. I'm like, oh my god, this guy's right.
Was it me?
No, it was maybe on your fake account, your fake trolling account. Jim Baird. Absolutely. I mean, that's a good word to spread too.
Absolutely, yeah. Keep them in the water, and then have the camera. If you're taking a photo, have the cameras ready, quick show and back. But I try to only fish when I'm prepared to keep one, because even with single barbless, you never know. You could get them in the gills. Yeah. God forbid you can get them in the eye. I just absolutely hate that. Anytime that happens, I think I'm going to give up fishing, because this makes me feel like absolute crap. I don't enjoy that. So I think the compassion for the fish is an important skill that should be taught first before, everyone's like, oh, you got to get all these lures, get this and that, and put 3 treble hooks on them, barbed. And then throw some live bait on there too. Just to start with respect for the fish.
Those giant treble hooks just kill every fish. There is no really catch and release.
Yeah, if they're barbed, it's not good.
But at the same time, I remember we did this one big canoe trip in Labrador, and we had my buddy Marty along, and he was like not a fisherman. I think he was like maybe a vegan or something at the time, or he was didn't believe in it, and then except if you had to for food. And then we hit one day where the temperature dropped to like -5, and none of the fish were biting, and it was like super hard, and all we could catch is little ones. Then Marty was like, okay, now we got to fish, but it's like you're getting snagged, you don't know how to cast, you know what I mean, you're not catching anything, right? So if you want to be able to have that skill of being able to catch food and cook it up and eat it, and that feeling of self sustainability to some extent, or self-reliance, and actually be able to rely on that skill if you have to, which I think is a confidence or good skill to have.
Best survival skill there is, arguably, for long term, if you had to survive for an extended period.
So I just kind of feel like you have to learn how to. It's a good thing to learn how to do, especially if you're going to be doing the kind of stuff that we do.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's fun. It's fun too. Let's be honest.
I know. There's that side of me that I'm like, I feel guilty about. It's like I don't necessarily want to keep a fish right now, but I'm at this pool beneath this huge rapid in the middle of nowhere, and I just have to know. I got to know if there's a huge monster in there, and there's like this excitement that's still still in me that used to drive me.
Right.
But yeah.
But you've lost it a little bit.
It's just the sense of guilt.
Yeah.
You know, dealing with that, and those days where I hook a fish badly and I just feel bad about it. Like those days, I've had enough of those days that it's just changed my perspective. But you know, people are going to roll their eyes, but sharing good handling practices is important to me, and that's one thing I love about fishing and doing it in the videos is sharing. Wet your hands. Use a rubberized net. Barbless hooks. You know, and people are probably tired of me saying it, but anyway, it's important.
Well, it's especially important when you're doing a lot of, like if you're at a fishing lodge and you're doing a lot of catch and release, and there's a lot of impact right in sort of one area too, and the fishing is like amazing there. You know what I mean? Like that's where you really, in those situations, you really have to be, you know, dialed in on it, right?
Yeah. And let me ask you this: do you think fish experience pain? This is the age-old question.
That's a good question. Yeah, I probably would think they do. Like, who knows? Maybe not. In that we don't know if they experience it in the same sense that that humans do. You know what I mean?
And
what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Or they at least experience suffering.
Right. Yeah.
So. Yeah, there are all sorts of new studies about it there, but most of the information that we anglers get is from like anglers associations saying like, no, don't worry, it's okay. But no, the science is pretty conclusive on that. I feel like
probably a fish's like bony mouth might not hurt as bad as us trying to fight against a hook, and if we were in the water,
right?
If we just our faces would rip off, right?
Or is that the fatal? Is that the flaw in thinking that we anthropomorphize everything? Like we think about it in terms of human terms, right? Like a common one is they don't have the part of the brain that we have that's responsible for our pain, so therefore they can't experience pain. Or, but I agree, that's probably the true. Or you know, sometimes you'll hook up a fish and it gets off, but then it goes back for it. So that kind of makes you think, okay, so it can't be that bad.
Yeah.
Or if you had a hook in your mouth, you wouldn't be like fighting like crazy. So they must not experience pain. It's just different, and we can't assume that. There's no pain or no suffering. There's definitely suffering. Yeah,
they do come back. I have had that happen where they come back for it again. But that doesn't mean they don't feel pain. It just might mean they're not smart enough to equate those two things together.
Exactly.
Or maybe they're pissed because it hurts them and they want to come hammer the thing.
Yeah.
And they don't realize it's on a rod.
Well, sometimes they're in that defensive mode, like a bass on the nesting, not nest.
Bass on a nest,
I can't remember the word, but anyway.
It's not called a nest?
No.
I always thought it was called a nest.
A bed?
I don't know. Nesting bed? Spawning bed?
Spawning bed. Thank you. That's it. They'll be incredibly aggressive to anything. So that's why the fishing season on bass opens so late, right? Because they're so aggressive around the spawning beds that you just have to.
Too easy
They'll
to
go
catch.
after anything. You could cast again and again and again, and they're probably going to hit it over and over. Pike, also super aggressive. So it's, to an extent, it's just instinct, right? So
yeah, and I think what you're saying is that, you know, like fishing's fun, catching a big fish, landing a big fish, fighting the fish. You know, there's a level of, you excitement. Know, enjoyment, like killing the fish, injuring the fish, not fun. It's like, you know, even hunting, you know, strikes a primal chord, but actually killing the animal is not fun. Watching people eat it, that providing for people, that's fulfilling, right?
Exactly.
But I think that I think we're learning more and more that all kinds of things in nature have a lot deeper of a connection to the things around them and a lot deeper of their own form of consciousness.
Exactly.
You know, like with trees and, you know, and I would believe fish too, just because we don't understand it. If a tree, like, did you ever see that David Suzuki did of nature things on this, but they talked about the old documentary The Secret Life of Plants, and they hooked up sensors with modern technology to a plant, and they said that, you know, the scientists got David Suzuki to come in and say, okay, go and water this plant, and there's, you know, like a lie detector test on the screen. There's those nice wavy smooth lines when the guy goes to water, and he goes, okay, now take these scissors and go cut and kill the plant. And so he goes to cut it, and the guy knocks his hand away before he can kill it. And the sensors are going all like this. And he says, well, David Suzuki says, how do you explain that? He's like, the only way I could explain that is that the tree is reading your mind.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
I have this horrible fear that someday we're going to realize like trees are sentient. or can feel pain. And I've been like sawing them and cutting them. Of course, dead ones. But
right. Well, here's the thing: nothing. So if we do realize that fish have feelings, is it going to be as much fun fishing for them? I mean, how long have people? It is. Right? Yeah. Like how long? Here's the thing: nothing can live without something else dying, right?
Yeah.
In the world, and you know that I don't want to make it an easy thing, but yeah, I still defend. I know some people don't believe in it and that kind of stuff. I think that all comes from a good place, but I don't think it's like an inherently evil thing to do. Me personally,
no, I'm certainly not saying that.
Yeah, no, of course you're not. Of course,
obviously, it'd be completely hypocritical. I still fish, and arguably, having these thoughts and beliefs makes it more unethical.
I just think we don't have to pretend, right? Like a lot of indigenous people had this deep respect. They believed that the caribou were smarter than people, and you know they had a deep respect for the animals, but also harvested them. I just don't think that we have to pretend. I think just that they don't feel pain and that trees that don't matter and they like being cut down as an excuse to harvest them. I think we have to live with both of those things is a step kind of forward for when you're thinking 7 generations, you know?
Exactly. All things in moderation, right? Yeah. And if we don't live in moderation, then we're going to pay the consequence, just like a parasite feeding on a host and that kills the host, right? It's no different.
Totally.
And just to wrap up on animals and their feelings, I think the bottom line is they're just a lot more complex than we give them credit for, and we can't assume that they're mindless and meaningless. Their lives have meaning.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, no, it's an amazing, fascinating, and also horrible in many ways world, though, isn't it?
It is. The world is. There's inherently suffering, right? Like I'm not religious, but I'm very interested in Buddhism and in the world. Suffering is inherent to existence, right? You just and fighting that only makes it worse. You just have to accept it. But anyway, don't want to get too philosophical.
Yeah. No, that's fine, man. I feel like one of the things I love about solo trips is you actually get that time where you sort of naturally, we're not on our phones, you naturally kind of drift into this sort of almost meditative state.
Exactly.
And that's kind of where you philosophize a bit. Like, you know, philosophy, they say take a bit of time to philosophize a little every day, or take a bit of time to pray every day. They're very similar things they do for your body. And when you're in like a wild natural space and when you're alone, that's when I think one of the only times where I can honestly say that thoughts come to me that are truly my own, that are unobstructed through, you know, the lens of the path I've walked in the world. Have you had similar experiences when you're out there?
Oh, absolutely. It's therapeutic, like nothing else. I was on that 12-day trip in Quetico last month, and I actually had a pretty bad few months for mental health, and that 12 days out there alone completely reset me. And in the month plus since, I've been doing a lot better, because in the winter I'm not getting those long trips that really put me in a different state of mind, that meditative state of mind. Summer I get them a lot, right? Like I'm doing the longer trips, nothing crazy. The longest trips that we've done are 2 22-day trips. So some people are doing trips in the months, you know, the odd person.
Yeah.
But anyway, the weekend trips, you know, they just don't put me in that place. They're nice and they're peaceful, but there's something about a long trip out there, especially alone, that just puts you in a different place. Yeah,
and I find there's so much work to do to get ready for a weekend trip. If you have the time, you might as well spend a couple more days out there, because it's going to be the same amount of work in prep and in post, right?
Yeah, getting home and drying out this huge hot tent and everything. I know it feels like, and we're so spoiled that we get to say that because we do this full time. Most people, like I've been in that position where I was working 9 to 5 and then I could only get out on the weekends, and I cherish that time. I went out almost every weekend. I used to post like mostly pretty short videos with 2 or 3 longer trips per year when I used my limited vacation. We're so starved for vacation here in North America. Like most of the developed world has way more paid vacation than we do. 2 weeks is the starter here. And if you're into canoe tripping, that's like nowhere near
enough. It's not enough. And then also, how many people want, if they have 2 weeks a year, do they really want to spend it doing something that might turn out to just be a bug-infested bog, rainy, and not be relaxed? Yeah. And you know what I mean? Like, they're gonna go to freaking Florida or something, you know?
Yeah.
Instead, right? It's a hard sell to get some of your 9-to-5 buddies to come on a canoe trip. How much is the float plane charter? Where are we going? How cold is it? Right? Like, sounds like another good solo trip, Jim. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know that's why a lot of my trips have been solo. It's the trying to get someone who has a similar schedule to us is hard, right? Because most people are stuck to a 9-to-5, whereas we're trying to hammer in the trips, and we have a more relatively flexible schedule. And then for them to have the passion too, the perhaps skills, perhaps equipment. So that's why you end up doing a lot of solo trips, right? Like I go with Xander sometimes because we're both in the exact same boat. No kids and doing this full time. And all that, and you can go with Ted.
Yeah,
but Ted's also working.
He's just been doing YouTube. I don't know. He hasn't been uploading so much lately. I think he's just like trying to just do, like, instead of doing a bunch of smaller videos, I think he's just trying to upload like more sparingly big ones, and he has had some luck with that. Like we did one in Algonquin. He hadn't posted for a while. I did like 3 episodes, and he did one and got like 800,000 views, like way more. Like, I noticed you and Xander do that a lot too, eh?
Yeah, well, I think part of that is just like losing the passion a bit for the short trips, like we were talking about. And if you can, you might as well put all that prep into a long trip. But the longer trips do so much better in terms of YouTube, and it's what I'm passionate about making too. And there's just an inherent story. You know, if you want to do like an overnight trip, you almost need some sort of
survival
gimmick. Or I don't know, some like new toy or gadget. You gotta bring a show. And I'm not an entertainer or a showman at all. I just love sharing my passion for doing this. And a long trip inherently has a story, just getting from A to B, right? And that may not be super compelling, but stuff happens along the way. You don't know what's going to happen. It's not scripted. And if nothing else, it's like peaceful content in beautiful places.
Yeah, and it's about the journey. I remember after I did the Hess River, a long way to go along the Stewart. And people are like, a lot of people get picked up there by float plane because the Stewart's like pretty boring and it's a long slog and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, I can't afford that. So I'm going to paddle the Stewart. And sure enough, I paddled through a burn that was just extinguished. I started smelling it and I'm like, whoa. And I'm walking through just smoldering stumps, trees this big around, like, you know, probably like 8 inches in diameter that have been burned right through and fallen over. But yet there's like no burn marks on the rest of the trunk. Just like weird stuff and smoke, and it looked like some like alien landscape, you know. Then I see I see a cinnamon black bear and another black bear. Then I see these crazy cliff dwelling swallow nest, thousands of nests, but then hawks trying to kill them and swooping above. And I'm just filming. I'm like, this is super cool. You know what I mean? Like, this is like just pulling out the camera and sharing those things that you see along the way. Maybe an old cabin, you know. I love that aspect of it too. Is I think it was Bob Henderson who wrote the book Every Trail Has a Story. You know, that's always just a thought that resonates with me, because a lot of people don't realize that these portage trails we're following on have been there not long after the retreat of the glaciers, right? And you could be traveling on the exact same trails that, you know, an Iroquois exploration party traveled through 2,000 years ago, et cetera, right? And is that part of the draw, the passion for you? Like we talked about the explorers, that's definitely, like I feel that my heroes in this are probably all dead. You know what I mean? Right. My real heroes, the people that I really get inspiration from to do my trips, probably aren't alive anymore. You know?
Yeah, I've got next up Samuel Hearn's story.
Yeah,
I'm really interested in that one. But yeah, all these people, they just make me feel like a fraud. But you know, I'm not a survivalist at all. I'm just out there having fun.
Well, neither am I. I didn't know I was either. And then next thing you know, I won alone. Like, you'd be surprised. You know, seriously.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy, actually. Yeah, you weren't really like diving into that genre. Well, I mean, you were doing a bit of hunting and fishing and stuff, but that alone is another level. Yeah, Aaron and I have talked about that sometimes, whether we would go on if we were asked. And
I just think as a backcountry paddler, look, the better you are at something, the more you realize you're not going. And then that sometimes people get like, what do they call that? When they actually feel like imposter syndrome. You know, some of the best people get that because they you're like, I feel like so soft compared to these explorers, or you know what I mean? Like the people that actually are the most talented are oftentimes the most like humble about things, right? And I suppose that's true because going into alone, I didn't think I had all this experience in survival, but then I kind of realized I did, and that experience is just the ability to tough it out, man. Mm-hmm. You can't look that up in a survival book. Like you can open a survival book and really kind of visualize how to make a certain type of trap, and but you can't visualize how to still be having fun when all your buddies are cold and wet and crying and want to go home. You know what? You don't understand what I mean?
Yeah. Actually, that first trip I did, the backcountry trip with a couple buddies, where I was catching that 6 pound smallmouth.
6 pound smallie, baby. Yeah. Like that'll get you going back.
Oh, yeah. And so I was all in. I wanted to stay, but the weather for the last day of our trip was looking pretty rainy. So the other two guys wanted to head out, and I was just not pleased. We were all packed into a 15-foot canoe. It was It was just loaded.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So that was an impetus to go solo. Was you guys want to go home? I want to stay for another month.
Right. So. Yeah. So there's something about that just was like, this is what I want to do. Yeah. So then I went back to school to study. After my marketing career, I went back to school to study cartography. Oh, cool.
GIS, Geographic Information Systems, modern map making, in layman's terms. And I got into that. That's what got me a forestry job up in Northern Ontario. And I was really enjoying that, actually. But then the YouTube stuff started building. And I just really, if I went all in on this, I only made like $40K in my first year or so. So if you have a big mortgage or something like that, that's not much.
What, off YouTube? Or
yeah. In my first full-time year. So it was a gamble, right? Like I wasn't even making a proper
this is
income.
This is not that long ago that you, like maybe 3 years ago
coming up on 4 years full-time.
But that's the difference between going full-time. Like I saw your channel go from like good numbers to just all of a sudden going bonkers.
That was 2022. Since then, it's actually been pretty slow. 2022, I think it was that COVID wave of outdoorsy people wanting to consume that content. And since then, I've never replicated. Like I had five out of 6 videos, I think, in a row go and have millions of views.
Wow. Yeah.
I've never had anything like that. The odd one gets into the millions now. The money is better these days. I think YouTube's putting more ads on, but the views and subs don't come like they used to for me anyway. And I feel like a lot of people find that, but there are people who are just killing it too. And then the saturation of the platform has just increased exponentially.
Well,
all these young kids too who want all they want to do is be a YouTuber. Right. So you're fighting for those eyeballs with so many people nowadays.
And it's great that you can influence people and that people want to emulate what you do, but that also means that there's more people watch and they say, oh, Lost Lakes is doing well, Jim Baird's doing well doing these trips, and they're like, he's inspiring me to go do it. But then that's what you have to realize. You inspire other people to do it, but then there's going to be more people coming to the platform, and probably less overall people watching your stuff compared to the next one. And people like new channels and stuff like that too, right?
This is true. Yeah, this is true. And YouTube, I think, is trying to push smaller channels a bit, because otherwise how do they get the next wave of content creators, right? They got to keep people in their pipeline. But it's incredibly hard to break through these days. I see some really good content out there from smaller channels, and just thinking, man, that 5-10 years ago this would have broken out, right? And now they can barely hit 1,000 views, that kind of thing, for some,
because it's just
some
such
videos.
A struggle because there's so much other competition.
So we got in at a good time. I think it can help to be early adopters. Not that we were that early. You were well before me, but Yeah.
So what was the point where, so you knew you wanted to do something in the outdoors. What was the point where you're like, I have to, like, there's something about this, about exploring the backcountry, camping, fishing, paddling, that really, like, because you must feel it. You must feel like that draw, like, it's not enough for me. Like, for me, for example, back when I was doing trips, I went and did the Nahanni when I was pretty young, and people are like, well, you got to do it where you're young, once in a lifetime trip of a lifetime. And I just, like, couldn't accept that because I was just so addicted to it. And, going to the north, and you probably feel another pull as you're explaining. Can you kind of sum it up to a point in your life where you just felt like you had to make this a bigger part of what you do?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I can pinpoint it. It was in my marketing days in Toronto. I was working on the 70th floor of the BMO Tower, and I got passed up for a couple promotions by people who had been at the company not as long as me, and I had good results. I was working my butt off, like long hours, and I hit puberty really late, and my voice was, like, I still don't have, like, a really deeper booming voice, but
a lot of taller people do, though. You're tall.
Yeah, so I think my voice, like, doesn't match with my body necessarily. Right. But back then, I sounded very young still when I was working in marketing, and I was told that my boss got wind that I didn't get the job because I sounded too young for that level of seniority. So I just felt completely alienated at that point. But it was such a blessing in disguise because it just told me what I really wanted. I was chasing what I thought I wanted, which was, my dad was a salesman too. He worked in marketing, and I thought that was just my path. And I wanted to climb the ladder, and I wanted to have a nice house and buy a cottage in the Muskokas and that sort of stuff. Or that's what I dreamt of. And then in that moment, I realized I didn't care about any of that. So I quit after I got passed up for the second promotion with some money in the bank. I flew to Chile and spent a month down there because it wasn't paddling season yet here. I came back, did the road trip in my grandpa's minivan. Yeah. And at that point I was addicted, and I knew I had to base my life around this. Yeah. So I ended up going back to school and anyway, that got me the job up in Northern Ontario. Yeah. And that was huge too, because then you're close to everything. You don't have to drive from Toronto to get through cottage country traffic on the weekends, right? Yeah. You're just there.
And the amount of money. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is that you can live in Toronto and learn these outdoor skills. A lot of people don't because it's hard for them to research where to go and where to jump off. And also you have to spend more time and money to get from point A to point B. So especially when you're younger and you don't have a lot of money, you really have to be into it to justify spending every last cent. And, when I was living in Toronto, that was my entire life, was just being in the bush all the time. I worked in Toronto. I was gone every second I got, and I had a job that I could take longer off because I was doing commission sales stuff, so I could do these longer trips. And, I had a girlfriend there at the time, and when I broke up with her and started, like, dating other women, they're just like, where are you from? They're like, how do you not know? Why do you have fish guts on your hands? Like, how do you not know anything that's going on in this city, right? Yeah. So you still, and I think that should be inspiration for people that maybe live in some larger urban centers, that you still can learn the skills that you and I have also managed to learn.
Yeah, and there's actually tends to be a lot more outdoor community in terms of, like, people you can meet up with and whatnot and learn from in cities. People in Toronto, a lot of them are heading north to Algonquin for the weekend, right? And there's tons of paddlers up in Northern Ontario. People really like their motorboats and their quads, right?
Yeah.
There aren't as many paddlers because a lot of people grow up with nature there, and it's just a given. But for those of us who were starved for it, we know how precious it is. So. And that's one thing I kind of miss up there is having a lot of you guys, at least the YouTube genre for Ontario backcountry campers. You're down here, like you're a bit further north.
Yeah, but that makes you more. That makes you more legit. Like I look at where you're going and what you're doing. I'm like, man, this is just in his backyard. You know, David Jackson, he doesn't post that much. You know, he just goes north of, you know, the part of Toronto he lives in, not far from Nipigon, I think, and he's just
Red
like
Rock,
smashing giant lake trout in the backcountry. Like, you know, it's just right in your backyard. I mean, that whole area is epic. Like if I could, that's where I would live, freaking Armstrong or Caribou Lake or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I would live in a place like that in Ontario. And there's so many lakes here. And so like the Yukon is amazing and it's beautiful and it's wild. And there's all kinds of amazing things. I totally would live there as well. But like living in the area that a part of Ontario that you live in, I think would probably be like pretty close. Like what it's unrivaled fishing. You know,
it's a real sweet spot. I mean, where we live, just around Thunder Bay, is right between Wabakimi and Quetico. Mm-hmm. So for, you know, nice park destinations, I love Wabakimi. That's
I've never been there.
Tradition. No.
Oh
wow.
What do you like about it?
You know, it's rugged. There's some whitewater, the wildlife. You're just getting into what I feel like is a different level of wilderness. Mm-hmm. Like if you go to Algonquin, it's wild. There's great wildlife, scenery, and everything. But the paths are well trodden and everything. But once you get to a certain latitude, it's just more raw, you know. And I love the rawness. The rawness to me feels pure. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like the water is very clean and the campsite isn't going to have garbage and that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I love that. Or the campsite is very rugged and grown in.
And there's actually firewood there.
I prefer that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I'm not trying to crap at Algonquin. I feel like I've talked it down a couple times, but you know, it's a beautiful park. And the one thing that I've actually never done a backcountry trip in Algonquin, which is crazy for someone who grew up in Toronto and loves paddling. But the having to reserve a lake to camp on, that's kind of a deal breaker for me. Yeah. I want to go where the wind blows me.
Right. Right. You don't want to have to be out of your campsite for a certain time and over to the next lake. And yeah. Although the reservation system there kind of came in probably out of necessity.
For sure.
You know,
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Because if on a long weekend and you have everyone going to like Little Joe Lake or something, and there's 50 campers there and 10 campsites. It's a disaster. Like, it's not fun for anyone. And then you're having people carve out new campsites and build fire pits, which most people don't know how to do properly in terms of like burning into a root system, for instance, and that kind of stuff. So no, it has to be managed like that because of the traffic. But that's what I love about Wabakimi and places like that.
Algonquin is still a shockingly good speckled trout fishery, though.
No doubt. Yeah.
Which is awesome, which they really have managed to conserve that. I mean, it still there's a lot of trout fishermen. That's when you see all the local guys into Algonquin, or maybe, you know, Bancroft and stuff, but it's in the spring where you just see like the local guys from the little towns around the outskirts of Algonquin that are in there fishing, and you know, the weather's miserable, but the fishing is still really good. Like I saw it voted one of the top 10 speckled trout fisheries in Ontario, which is like shocking, really, considering how far south it is.
And that's something to be proud of, for sure.
Well, from
a conservation success story standpoint, you know. Yeah,
so that for me it's a pretty cool place, but this year I'm going to do one up in Algoma, out of my camp, eh? Yeah. You have any spring trips planned?
Yeah. Aaron and I are doing a trip on the west side of Wabakimi and out few rivers, a bunch of lakes, the Palisade River, Savant, the Flint.
Oh, Savant Lake.
A bit of the Agoki.
Wow.
Stuff like that.
That's hardcore, man.
How long? Nothing compared to some of your trips and other people. I'm hoping for 15 days.
Yeah.
But that's if we're planning to start May 15th. So that's if it's iced out by then, which right now seems dubious.
Yeah.
It's been winter has really come back. We had a good snowstorm the other day.
Wow. Yeah, we did too. We had it was like 20 to 30 centimeters. We got like 35 centimeters, and it was minus 18. So at least it was easy to move. But like, that was just in April. Yeah, which is the worst it's been in April since we've moved here. But
it's hung on. Yeah, it comes back sometimes. Yeah, what are you gonna do? just gonna. It's that expression. If you hate snow, you're just gonna have the same amount of snow, but much less fun.
I like that one. You know? Yeah. You still will have less joy in life, but still the same amount of snow.
That's the quote. Yeah, I was paraphrasing it. What do you got planned?
So I'm gonna go start from my camp, so Algoma, and I'm gonna paddle a distance up my lake, do a big portage. Hopefully I can put into a smaller creek there and get into a lake, or maybe carry the whole way, and then loop through a chain of what are supposed to be trout lakes. There's one lake that just is listed walleye and brook trout only, which is like amazing. And then jump into another backcountry lake, and then jump down into the Blind River. I don't even know if there's going to be enough water in it or not, so I might have to come back. And if I have to come back, I'll hop up a couple lakes just for fishing and camping, whatever, just explore them and then come back. So it's a bit of like exploratory, because all I'm going off of is this old like area recreation map that just lists like the fish species, and it's pretty old. So I know at least some of the lakes on that map that said, they were trout lakes, somebody came and whipped bass in them, which is just the worst thing. People can do, but they, maybe they don't realize how it's going to destroy the native trout fishery, right? So that's kind of my spring trip. And my shoulder's been blowing out.
Are you having it? Like, are you making progress? My right shoulder's actually messed up too.
Is it? Is that the one? What happened? You got injured on a winter trip.
Yeah, that was my right knee. Tore my meniscus, and they. 2 months later, I had the surgery, and they just yanked it. It was too shredded to repair.
They pulled the whole thing?
Yeah, so there's no cartilage in that knee anymore. So I'm doing training every day, basically.
That's bad. So you heard it that bad?
Yeah, it was bad. A lot of people were like, "You little baby!" Like, it was agonizing.
Dude, I put an axe through my hand, and I didn't show the entire thing, and I got one like, "What a baby!"
Right?
Unsubscribe. I'm going to watch Lost Lakes. I'm like, I don't know, man. Should I send this guy the picture? Like, dude, my hand was. Oh no. The whole back end was like this.
That was gnarly.
It was crazy. It looked like the Terminator hand.
Yeah.
And I only showed the picture after the doctor. I took a picture of it, but the doctor had reopened it to look in. Was holding it open with forceps. So when the skin was just loose, it was just like you could see everything. It was kind of actually fascinating.
No.
To be honest with you,
no.
But yeah.
No, I couldn't I remember seeing it and feeling squeamish. Like, I'm a little baby with bad injuries, unfortunately.
There's a lot of blood. I was like feeling like the shock, like feeling nauseous and stuff. And I had a guy tell me, who is a first responder. He actually said I could have gotten a heli evac. As a Ontario resident and would be covered. I said, well, am I going to call the wambulance or something? He's like, no, because it's technically, like, it still is life altering. Like, I can't straighten my finger.
Oh, you still can't?
Well, I can't like, that's the best I can do.
But you have strength.
Yeah, I can't pop the bird. I can only do like that. I can't go like this. I can't do this. Yeah. So permanently damaged, right?
Oh man, that's scary.
Yeah, I can do it like in the movies, like the Americans in the movie. But he said if there's any potential life-altering injuries, that you can get heli evac and pay the same price as an ambulance. Would pick up. So technically, so just don't think that because everyone's like they're gonna pay. I'm gonna get the bill. So just if you're really injured out there and you're not, and it just no matter how experienced you are, shit happens and you get. I can't swear because I'm just too scared of swearing in front of my kids. But don't feel like you're gonna endanger your life more if you don't have to. You know? Probably made a better video that Aaron hauled you out of the bush.
Yeah, probably. That was we were just hoping like a snowmobile would come along or something,
right.
Or we were contacting friends on our SATCOM to see if they could sled out to get us, but no one was available. So we ended up it was either she hauls me out or we hit the SOS button, and we didn't want to use it frivolously, So. Mm-hmm. She ended up doing it. She's a hero. Yeah. She's way tougher than me. Like if one of us, if she was injured, like very bloodied, it wouldn't be a huge deal to her. She worked like concrete pouring and construction jobs. She's tough as nails. So
nice.
I'm the baby.
So how did you? You're princess. So modest, Jon. Come on, you're not a baby. No babies are doing are camping out at -30 every other day. How did you guys meet?
Tinder.
Yeah.
Good old Tinder, yeah. It was kind of a miracle because we lived outside of each other's maximum radius. She was in Drayleton, I was in Marathon, and the maximum radius was like 150 kilometers or something. So we must have driven by each other on the highway and gotten into each other's feeds that way. Thankfully, we both swiped right.
Yeah.
She had a picture of herself canoeing, soloing. So I was like, yeah, swipe right.
Yeah.
And she had no bio, like no description on her profile. So I was like, oh, she's probably not that serious. And I was looking for something serious. But thankfully, we swiped right. And we met up at a Tim's and then went for a hike in Ruby Lake Provincial Park.
Where's the Tim's?
Nippigan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So classic Canadian first date.
Totally.
She sent my license plate to her friend who's a cop just to... make sure I didn't get any crazy ideas.
That's a smart idea, though.
Yeah,
because you never know, you're randomly bumping into somebody on Tinder on the Trans-Canada Highway. Yeah, the odds on you being a murderer, which we, probably you're not, but you never really know. Yeah.
How did you and Tori meet?
So she was working so she's from Newmarket. She was working at an insurance company with my cousin. And my cousin was dating Tori's friend, and then we all went to the bar. It wasn't like a setup or something. And so we went out to like a Colonel Mustard's, and Tori was just like, still remember, she's wearing this cute little like pink Hollister hoodie, and she's like kind of quiet. I'm like, wow, she's pretty cute. And then I managed to like say a couple things that were funny that made me sound smart, which really could have gone either way, right? Like I could have just said something overly offensive and bungling and, sexist or whatever. Just kidding. But so we ended up kind of meeting up again, hike. She was like outdoorsy. She's like, I thought I was outdoorsy before I met Jim, like rollerblading in the valley outdoorsy, right? And I'm just like taking her on like a raging whitewater river where there's snow on the ground, dumping, swimming through ice. That was our first, like, tried to run a waterfall, didn't even give her any pointers, like didn't even tell her like what a draw was. Gave her the dry suit. I had no dry suit, just like ice in the water, dump. Pull up onto a snowbank. I'm like, well, we better make camp here. Didn't even change my clothes, just kept chopping wood to keep warm. She set up the tent. I'm like, how did you know how to set that tent up? You obviously have a way higher IQ than me. And then it ice rained all night, and I wake up and I'm like, hey, how'd you sleep? She's like, I didn't sleep because I thought you were going to die. I can't believe that you didn't freeze to death. How did you live through that? I'm like, well, I kept warm. I was explaining it to her, and she's like, wow, cool. We're getting out at the first bridge, by the way. so we pulled over. We didn't make it to the end, and she's just like got out of the bridge and like waved down a car and was like, can you call us a cab? It was like one of those Highway 7 runs, west of Madoc. So there was reception in areas and a cab near Tweed. So we had a cab. Right. We stashed our stuff and had a cab drive us to the beginning as our shuttle.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. But our first date was a little hike, and it wasn't long before we jumped into that. And she came back. So I'm like, well, like, obviously, if she was like, that was cool, even though she wanted to bail, and she was like laughing and thought dumping was fun.
Litmus test passed. Right?
100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Aaron and I, our second date was a winter camping trip. Similarly,
that's bad.
And she passed that with flying colors. We were walking through a marshy area, and she flunked her boot through and got a soaker. And just like rolled with it, and so litmus test.
That was a good,
as well.
And then you're like, oh, actually, she might be tougher than me. Sometimes I think Tori might actually like this stuff more than I like it. Like, she might not be in for like the more intense trips, but even we did one Crow River, Petawawa River, and there was times when I'm like, she's having more fun than I am right now. You know what I mean? Like, there's some tough trips, parts of it, right? So it's nice to find somebody that's into it like that.
Yeah, right? As opposed to fighting it. Like, if you love it and you're always wanting to get away, and they don't understand that's a tough one. It
is, especially when it's such a large part of your life. You're never going to see your significant other if they're not into it, right?
It's a unique passion in that it requires such extended periods of absence, right? You just have to be away for long periods, and if they don't like to come with you, then it could be a dividing point, right? Yeah, I remember your Natashquan, was that it? River trip with Tori?
Yeah.
That was incredible. That was pretty early on, wasn't it?
I don't know how long we'd been together, but that was Tori's first like remote fly-in wilderness trip and her longest trip at that.
Right.
And there was like one portage on there that was 6K long that was
like
through an old
fire?
burn that no one walked on since the 40s. Yeah. And she was like, couldn't believe that this is what we had chosen to do. She actually at one point thought what we should do is we should go whip our canoe off the side of a canyon to have an excuse to use our beacon, our survival beacon. Like she actually like was like, like brought this up as an idea of how we could,
Yeah. I think there's a sense of self-preservation that comes out. Where like you can be scared if you're over your head. You just want to get out and feel safe again.
Yeah.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You just need that safety.
That's right? Absolutely. But then I think it was really, she was like bleeding, it's covered in soot. But at the end, she's like, I think what happened was she didn't realize that we would actually ever get through it. And at the end she's like, yeah, you're right, you just keep going and you keep moving and you get done it. And I think for her that was like a really like character building. I mean, it was for both of us, but for her I think it was like really character building for her too, because she'd never done anything that crazy.
Yeah, I think canoe trips are very character building, and I wish more like CEOs and politicians were canoe trippers, because I think it brings out a lot of good leadership and just being able to bear bad conditions and get through it. Does Tori do some of your editing?
Yep. She did our whole thing that we did on the Lower Stikine with the family. She cut that, and she cuts a lot of our family stuff. She cut the Teslin and Yukon River trip that we did, and a few other things here and there. She's cut too. Winter camping stuff. Edit? I do, yeah.
You
so
do
this winter
because I know you have an editor part of the time, right?
Yeah. So I started off doing all of my editing. Obviously, because who can pay for an editor, really?
Yeah.
And then as I started doing more, I started using other editors here and there, and then for my big series that I know are going to do well, I know I can afford an editor, and then some of them take off and pay for all the other ones. Some of them don't make enough to pay for the editor. It's kind of like that.
Easter famine.
Yeah, but this winter it's been like I get out and do a trip, and then I get back, and I don't have enough time to pass that footage on to the editor and organize it. So I just sit down and go hard 3-day long days, cut it, and then there's been maybe probably 3 or 4 other videos this winter, stuff from the Yukon and my James Bay trip that I did that an editor cut for me. And it's hard, like, to be honest, when they're like, wow, Jim, your editing's gotten great. And I'm like, yeah, man, just keep practicing,
Well, that's really nice though, that you have 3 potential editors for your projects.
Kind of, yeah. I have like one guy and another dude he works with, same guy that works with Xander. Had him on my podcast Kyle. As well. Kyle. And then another guy that I started working with who's like really good at like taking like a long trip and kind of condensing it and getting it done by a certain time. Which is nice. So
you mentioned your old Labrador trip. You posted a trailer for that recently.
Yeah.
Is that like to lead to the old video?
I think maybe I posted it afterwards because I didn't post it before. I'm not sure.
No, it's like your Labrador trip from like 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
That was an epic trip.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, I've come a long way in filming.
You posted the trailer for that recently.
I might have, fairly recently, like a month or 2 ago, kind of recently. Maybe. So probably what I did was I just, I never posted the trailer all by itself. Okay. And I wanted to post just the trailer and then promote it. Yeah. But YouTube wouldn't let me promote it because the title sounded too sensationalistic.
What?
Yeah. So the title was like, it was like 38 days remote survival camping in the Labrador wild, and that was like too intense. I'm like, but that's what we really did.
Yeah, you mean like the algorithm just didn't...
It rejected the promotion. So I still could upload the video and run it, but I couldn't promote it. So I was going to try to promote it to run a little ad using the trailer just to, get subscribers and get more views on the longer video. But I'd essentially shot that video, quite some time ago when I was on assignment with Field and Stream, who never actually used it because they sent me on all these other trips. They didn't have like the budget to do anything with with it at that point because I was like the most expensive thing they'd done in 124 years, sending me like snowmobiling across the Arctic and stuff. And so I ended up hanging on to it, paying an editor to cut it all myself, and then selling it to Canoe and Kayak. Which I never really like told Field and Stream I was going to do, but I guess they didn't care because it was long enough afterwards and they never did anything with it. And then Canoe and Kayak liked that. And then I came back to Field and Stream and I did my Kasagami River series, edited it myself, and then sold it to them, broke even on that. And they're like, well, now that you're handling all the editing and it's so turnkey for us, we'll start running your stuff again. So that was like my whole thing before I got into YouTube, was just like trying to sell digital content and some print stuff and some, digital written vlogs and stuff, about video series to these platforms. You know what I mean? Which was like very, very hard.
It's such a miracle now that we can just post a video and the ad system built into YouTube can just take care of that. We don't have to secure a deal. Like you can do a sponsorship on top, but you can just make a living without having to self-promote or make a deal or anything like that, and just focus on the content and what you love. That's a gift. That's a huge gift, as opposed to what you're describing, always trying to get a deal or finance it. Right.
And then it was all financed through like sponsors that would just appear organically in my content. So it was a hard sale because I can't, with YouTube, it'd be like, I can guarantee you that your stuff's going to be in my next video barring any like catastrophe, but I don't even know if Field and Stream's going to run it. So Novacraft Canoe gave me 2 canoes for free for this trip that never ran, and I just like never talked to them about it. I never followed up because Field and Stream didn't run it. And then like 2 years later, so I did the Kasagami before I sold that to Canoe and Kayak. So then I called them back. I'm like, hey, it's Jim Baird again. Hey, sorry about that, but can I get another canoe? And they're like, fine. They gave me another canoe. And then that took off. And there's like, this is the best thing we ever did, because the new canoe they gave me took off. And then the old canoes I sold to Canoe and Kayak, and everything did great. And they're like, so they took that gamble on me, and it worked out for them, right? So it's an amazing investment for product sponsorships. If someone's just sending you product and the video has a chance of getting in the hundreds of thousands or millions of views, that's an amazing ROI from a marketing perspective, right? That's a good deal for that. Did Yeti send you stuff?
No, I don't really take any stuff anymore. It's just like when I get home, I don't want an inbox full of like sponsorship emails and all that. So I make it pretty hard to contact me, to be honest.
You're right.
Yeah, it's just all AdSense from YouTube. That's my whole business,
all the ones that reach out to you through your email and YouTube are never. I find you're working through a middleman. It's just like never good. It's always the brands that I reach out to myself that I connect directly with the brand for.
That's smart.
Yeah, so that's what I do. But Yeti was like, no, we don't want to work with you. We can't pay you. Blah blah blah. And then finally they're like, all right, Jim, we'll send you anything you want. Just leave us alone. They didn't really say that, so I'm like, really? So I selected all this stuff. They FedExed it all to me, and they're like, no strings attached. Just take it. We're not expecting anything from you at all. And I'm like, how are they not losing money? But a couple of years went by, and I'm like, wow, they're in here, and their bag is great. That's my day bag. They're a backpack which I can zip up, and it's waterproof, so I can carry it while I'm portaging, and I don't have this roll top dry bag that I can't get into and stuff. So that's great. And then I'm like, well, I can see why it's worth it for them, because now this has been in a bunch of videos that have got a ton of views, right?
Yeah, not to mention the price of a product that we would pay for. It might be $100 thermos or whatever, but they're selling it to a wholesaler for like $40, and their actual cost, including shipping it to you, might be $20. So it's actually way cheaper for them than paying cash, right? So it's a very good deal for advertisers to do those. But
agreed.
Once channels get to a certain point, there's usually cash involved too. But
you don't do much of kind of any sponsor stuff.
No, none. Like we used to accept the odd product. Amuck hammocks. They were the first company to give us any like real ongoing support, which was like a little money, which was nice at the time. I was still doing it part time, YouTube, and the hammocks. So that we were just so stoked about that. Yeah. But then since then we've gotten away from all of it. I just want to focus on the trips. Like I said, when I get back to an inbox full of emails, it's just like kills the vibe. Yeah. if I don't have to. If you have to, if
you.
I needed to, if that was what made this viable, then I would probably do it, right?
Yeah, I kind of, from like the expedition space, it's kind of like more accepted too that you have sponsors.
For sure, because the costs are way
I
higher.
really like chasing after brands and connecting with people and like just doing sales stuff. I get like I love the trip planning and I love working with sponsors. Like I just I don't like coming necessarily back to a loaded inbox with a bunch of like spammy emails of people trying to push like completely off-brand cheesy products that have nothing to do with me, that you know what I mean. But sometimes the odd good person reaches out to me, but most of all the sponsors I had, it's like long-term relationships. I can that stuff I actually have been using for years that I can pretty much organically include in my videos. That's authentic. Yep. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't really like doing the click the link in my bio and use promo code Jim Baird is awesome for your 10% off on these fuzzy, bobblehead dolls or whatever.
This
right?
Cryptocurrency.
Yeah. No thanks.
Yeah, sometimes there's a natural fit like Novacraft for you,
right?
And stuff like that.
I mean, my overhead is already so crazy too. With some of the expenses, like me and my brother, we split on a float plane that was $19,000. That
was the hood.
Yeah,
because they had to drop off fuel for you on the way. So that's that flight and back, and then your flight to that cache of fuel to your destination and back. Yeah,
which was Yellowknife. It was a different route too. So we had to pay them. It was like $3,500 for a flight just to cache fuel and back.
Yeah.
Then we landed there, refueled on our way. Then for the pickup, the guy could leave because he's empty. He could leave with fuel, land, cache the fuel, refuel some of it, then pick us up, load up, then fly back. Now that he's burnt fuel, by the time he got back to his cache, he could land and refuel and fly back. Like it was out there, man. You know what I mean?
I'm surprised it wasn't more actually.
Yeah.
Than 19K.
Yeah.
But you have two of you expensing, splitting that and expensing it, right? So it makes it justifiable.
Yeah, and I don't know how great, like our video, like I guess we probably paid for the thing, but like people wanted to see me do solo stuff, right? Like our videos didn't really, I don't know if we recouped all the money on that one, but it's
tough to recoup.
Still worth it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you're just grateful for the experience, and if you recoup most of your costs, you're just happy, right? Like our New Elton trip too. That'd be the same scenario. Yeah. Our flight was 11.5.
Right. Yeah.
So
and that's you're one couple, so that's coming out of your guys' pockets, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's tough. That was a Beaver you flew into, right? Yeah. When you're in, if it was an Otter,
it'd be way more. Yeah, and then the 206 is cheaper, but it's way small. You can't fit anything in there.
Yeah. We're trying to do the Drowning River this season. I know you recommended the Trap Lines North.
To me,
which I did buy.
Yeah,
and I have that for the trip if we take it out. Well, I was told if you go in high water, it is a scary river that lives up to its name. Is that why it's
called the Drowning River?
That's what Rob Haslam, the guy in Northern Ontario, canoe tripping vet, he says don't go in high water. It lives up to its name. But after that, it's a pretty nice whitewater run for the upper section, and the lower is actually it goes into the lowlands and becomes relatively flat and featureless. But we want to experience that transition to the lowlands as well.
Cool.
But anyway, we were trying to fly from Nakina, and the air service only has an Otter, so it's like $4,300 for a short flight for just two of us. And the only thing is an Otter could take two more people and another canoe, right? So it just feels it's hard to justify. And then the carbon footprint too is not.
Well, that's the other thing now too that you got to think about as well, right? Is that in this world, like I don't know if we're like going to match with the coal-fired power plants of China, but as people that care about the environment, it's like, can we still use it?
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm trying to think of it as we're conducting a business here that contributes to the economy, contributes to that local economy in Nakina, and this is like our one trip together for the year instead of flying, around the world or wherever.
Right.
So it could be justified, but
we just don't want to pretend. But that, you don't want to pretend that it's just that there's not some sort of footprint there either. Exactly. At the same time, right?
As opposed to driving somewhere and doing a loop where it's pretty green. relatively.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway,
that's true.
I think to do much and worry too much.
Well, hopefully I can inspire you to take more float planes. Rationalize it. Yeah. No, but it is a really, I mean, the amount of time it saves and just the sort
possibilities.
And just like there's something, because float planes have been around. It's obviously not a traditional thing, but there's just something cool about accessing areas by train and by float plane and these kinds of things that just goes to show, kind of just shows how remote they actually still are. You know what I mean?
It's a slippery slope once you get into float planes, because it just opens up so many possibilities that now the self-shuttled trips and whatnot, they just seem like smaller in comparison. But I don't know. We got a lifetime of more than a lifetime of routes in Ontario alone.
Yes.
So we're so spoiled.
I haven't done woodland caribou. I'd like to do the blood vein. I haven't done Wabakimi.
You should, man. I know that's like easy for you almost, but or like for your big trips, you're usually going more remote. I was in woodland caribou last fall for 17 days. Just about to post that video actually. And seeing them burn there was pretty interesting, because most of the park got scorched. And I've been wanting to go there for a long time. And it was like, well, now do I wait? It's going to be decades until the trees are any meaningful size.
So many places I've paddled through have burnt. You know, I mean, it's a natural thing, but then there's just been more burns.
The severity is increasing. The intensity. So that was...
It's kind of eerie though, isn't it?
It is. And actually, we had just got back from the Barren Lands 2 weeks before that trip, and it kind of reminded me of it, because everything's burnt down to bedrock almost, in a lot of it. So you have like this unobscured view for miles and miles, like the Barren Lands. So it is. It's an interesting experience and a bit of a moonscape. Totally worth going still. But it's hard
Did you see any woodland caribou?
I didn't, but I did see an animal that I've never had a good look at before. Just a fisher.
A fisher?
I've never had a good look at one before.
I thought you were going to say a Wolverine.
No, I knew you were thinking that. Yeah.
Cool.
So that was awesome.
Yeah, they're neat. They're kind of really similar to Wolverine. It's just smaller. Yeah,
more or less. They're like kind of like between a mink and a Wolverine, or a fisher.
And you had a good look at it. You were watching. You were observing it for a while.
So I've seen 2 or 3 before, but just barely saw them. So to get a good look at one, I'm always happy to check an animal off my bucket list, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Wolverine's still on there.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So you experienced the one up there on the seal, where you didn't see it though. You smelt it.
Right. So I didn't actually see it. I mean, I considered lying about it. Right? But I didn't. If I'm going to be perfectly honest, I'm like, did you see it? I'm like, no. So I saw the branches move from where it was. So it's that close. So my brother saw it. He's like, look at that. Is that a little bear? He's like, huh? That's Wolverine. And like, I didn't believe him. So we pulled over, and there's that like crunchy kind of dry moss. And I'm like, oh my God, perfect Wolverine tracks. So I kept following it till I got this like, this wall of like this dank, like super like pungent, heavy, musky scent hit me. I'm like, oh, what is that? I'm like, oh yeah, these things are weasels. They're related to skunks. They actually spray. So this thing knew I was following it, and sprayed, and I walked into this like nothing like a skunk, but like, you know, which is cool. And then later on in that trip, Ted and I were in a cabin at the mouth of the Seal. We had polar bears pushing on the walls and doing a lap around the cabin. We couldn't see them, so there's only one window. And I'm like, Ted, you want to go outside? And they're looking. It's like, you go, man. I'm like, you go, you know. So we didn't, because, you know, anyway, so we're like, we got to set up the trail cam, which I've got some cool stuff on. So we got to set up the trail cam tonight. And then the next morning we came with the trail cam was knocked over, and I was like up on a little chair, discarded rusted chair frame on a rock aimed at the cabin. And I saw Wolverine coming up right up to it, and this big nose smudge right across the trail cam. So I played it back, and sure enough, there's a Wolverine right this close going boom, and like knocked down and headbutted the trail cam down. But I've still never actually seen one. You know,
so close.
I know. It's honestly kind of like better. It's sort of like the pokaroo, but not as friendly. You know.
Have you seen a woodland caribou in Ontario?
I have, on Kasagami Lake.
Okay.
Yeah, Kasagami Lake.
On that trip where you burnt your hands?
Yeah. At the north. Also where? No, on Slade Islands.
Right. Yeah.
Which almost doesn't count.
Well, back then. Now it's different, but. Because wolves decimated the population there, right?
Oh, yeah.
It froze over, and the wolves, I guess, got sent to them and carried over to the island where there were just tons of woodland caribou living in paradise.
Scared,
no survival instincts. They would walk up to campsites, as you know, and that decimated the population. They're trying to rebound it, but it's struggling. But yeah,
that sucks. Yeah, Clarence the caribou was torn apart by wolves.
Yeah, it's special to see one.
Yeah,
because it could be like a dinosaur. It could go away.
Yeah, I actually ate one on my Moosonee trip.
Really?
Yeah. So in up in Moosonee, there was a couple guys. They with under Moose Cree First Nation Indigenous rights. They went out and they did traveled a long distance, I think, to the area around Kasagami Lake, saw 40. Wow. And, he's a friend of a friend, and this guy, he never over harvest or whatever. It's the first one he's ever got in his life, but they saw 40 and they got one each. And when I got back to this old basically float plane air hangar where we were kind of staging our trip out of, there was 2 woodland caribou being all completely butchered up and cut up, and the guy was chatting with me, and the guy that I did the trip with, Buck, he loves caribou. He's doesn't like to eat it, he just loves them as a species and wants to see them protected. So but he's also from Moosonee, so he knows stuff like this, how the people eat them. He took it well, and especially when we were each given a rump roast and some tenderloins. Oh. So I mean, they're not endangered, but they were pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
All things in moderation.
Yeah, I guess. But it's you can't. There's no hunting season. There's only a season open. You can only hunt them if you're indigenous. A certain. From a certain area and a band, I guess would be the word.
Traditional rights.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, they know how to do it sustainably.
Yeah,
they were doing it for millennia.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
I've eaten barren ground caribou too, which I thought was actually better. I've eaten a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah,
I was going to ask.
Yeah, once you start visiting these northern communities, like in Nunavut, and
groceries are outrageously expensive to get.
Yeah.
To get anything, so you have to harvest.
Yeah, and it's just the traditional food. Yeah, I've eaten some interesting stuff before. I'm sure you will. Are you looking at another trip? Are you going to do the drowning this year?
Yeah, so hopefully the drowning, but we want to get up to the Arctic in future years again. We want to do a river trip, and
how cool there's so much more to see. It's after the Hood, I'm
it's an addiction.
I get it.
Yeah. Well, you've been up before the Hood.
Well, I did the Cujo, which was epic, and which was way up, not in the Barren Grounds, in the Arctic Islands, very, very remote, expensive trip that me and my brother just slapped on our credit cards in when we were in our 20s or whatever. Right. Which in the end I don't regret doing, but probably most people not a good financial move. And when we got back, so I had done these mountain rivers, and we're we want to do a Barren Grounds one. We did the Hood, and it's just spellbinding. I was thinking it was going to be flatter, but it's not really.
Canyon. It's unreal.
Yeah. It was just so cool. I don't know in the video if it looks as dramatic. It's easy to portray that. Yeah. But I'm just this is super cool. It made me want to do more of those rivers,
Yeah. It's just endless up there too. And the trips can be so long. The rivers and lakes up there are just enormous. Mm-hmm. You can just paddle for months at a time, and wanderlust takes hold of you up there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm dying to do a huge multi-month trip, but it's hard logistically, right? To leave your life, and especially Erin, I feel guilty leaving her for that extended periods. 3 weeks is one thing.
I've done some longer ones, but the longest one I've done since I had kids was, I think, 25 days, and then plus travel time, so over a month, right?
Yeah, that's tough.
But then at the same time, I can also take them, because Tori's self-employed too. I can also do these things where I get to spend a lot of time with them and shoot some videos and basically rationalize the whole thing through that too. So it's a bit, but a month would be. It's not even that I would feel bad for the kids. I would just miss them too much.
Yeah, exactly.
And for Tori, right? I would just be oh God, it's day 20. I just want to see my kids. Or I would just be a total wuss about it, Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's one thing about our line of work is, we might be away for a while, but then we're home so much. You and Tori both work from home, right?
Yes.
When you're home. Same with Aaron and I. We both work from home, so we get a ton of time together when even despite being away. So you make up for it, and I think it's healthy as a couple to have some time apart and miss each other.
Tori says she doesn't mind when I go away. I was like, oh, okay. But I guess you get into a routine actually, and she's gone away and done a few trips, and I don't mind. I'm going away so much that I'm like, you want to go do a trip? Go! Don't worry, I got this, right? Just to sort of level off the playing field a little bit sometimes, and she loves it too. Like she gets a lot out of it, right? Yeah. What was your, if you could say, your favorite part of that trip up in Nunavut?
I mean, it had to be the caribou herd going past our campsite, but just the
second
landscape.
Favorite, because that's gonna be obvious.
There was also a white wolf, an Arctic wolf, following some of the caribou at one point. That was amazing.
The white wolf.
But like an Arctic wolf. So that was super cool. And then just the landscape, how different it is, and fields of cloudberries. I'm sure you've had cloudberries, right? Yeah. And just the scale of wilderness up there is something to witness. From the wildlife to the fish to the landscapes. It's just, it makes our wildlife here, like in Ontario, feel a bit small by comparison, even though it's still incredible. And there's so much to see here. It's just another level up there, and the remoteness too. So definitely have the bug. We'll be going back, but the cost makes it tough.
I wonder if you could find somebody else to split that otter with you.
Yeah,
and so just be like, you go and you start, and we'll stay put here for 2 days, and we can do a separate trip.
I know, it's just so hard to coordinate. Yeah, but
maybe if one of your fans would want to do it just to have a chance to hang out with you or something.
Yeah, that's an idea. But then again, trying to get on the same schedule as that we have, it just adds a complication. But
that's the one thing about flight trips where you have to take flights is like you have to leave at a certain time, right? And then when you see, you got to weigh all your bags. It just definitely puts another whole element into the whole trip, right? Like what's this airline's baggage restrictions, and getting there on time, and it's just like another whole thing.
Yeah, we'd never experienced that. The Nunavut trip was our first bush plane flight, period. So we got a last minute scare when we were told the weight limit was something and it was actually higher. So we were like stressing over what we could cut, and it's something we've never had to think about before. Thankfully, they were just able to get all our stuff in, but I know you and Ted were doing that for the hood, and it's a real complication, especially when you're trying to bring a bunch of filming gear. Like you said on that trip, you had like 40 pounds or plus of filming gear.
Probably, yeah. I forget what it was, but I would
easy
say
to
so.
hit, with a couple big cameras, a drone, extra batteries, power banks, solar panels, tripods, action cams, mounts for the action cams.
All the extra batteries, the cases themselves that you're carrying in, all your charging cables, You
gotta love it. If you don't love the filming and the tripping, like it would be such a chore. Yeah. But thankfully I still do.
Do you find that it sort of becomes second nature to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. To me, it's using the cameras is akin to making some casts here and there. Like, oh, that's a nice shot. Let me get that. That's a nice pool to fish in. Let me cast there. Exact same thing. Like, I've loved cameras for a long time. I used to sell cameras when I was in university. I worked at Black's Photography.
Oh, nice.
Selling cameras. So, yeah, I've loved them for a long time.
And is that where you kind of learned? Like, because your shots are really good. Did you just research how to do that, or do you have any actual education-based background in it? Is it self-taught?
Well, it's generous. I'm just very amateurish, but
you'll put something in the foreground. You'll put a tree in the foreground to film here. Your shots are lower. Like Xander is making fun of me and Ted because our tripods are also high. Every shot's like, hey, it's like somebody like leaning in to look at what you're doing, right? And half that sort of laziness and just moving. You're always moving your tripod in different perspectives, right? Yeah,
I love the low perspectives. I got a little tiny tripod. I love that. I used to like study it a bit and. Just working at Black's, that helped a lot. And no training by any means, just passion.
Do you notice that when you do a trip with a non-YouTuber or somebody that doesn't film, that it kind of reminds you how much faster you probably could do things if you weren't filming?
Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it easily chews up 2 hours out of a day. So if people look at the kilometers you covered for the day and think, oh, that's not that much. He's just a wimp. Well, the filming takes a lot of time. And sometimes it could be more than that. It depends how much you want to put into it and what the conditions are too, right? If it's a nasty day, you're probably just action camming it quite a bit because you don't want to ruin your big cameras.
Right.
But yeah. But still love it and enjoy it. Do you?
I know. Yeah, I notice the same thing. I find too I can get more into it when I'm out there solo sometimes. Also, it's also easier to find the words I sent than when somebody else is you have an audience. You know, I find too. But I one thing I did notice that's maybe a negative is that I notice like I'm kind of thinking about what storyline I'm following, and sometimes I'm not like as in tune with nature or with with the animals and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like at one time I could sense that I was going to see an animal before I sensed it. And I started calling myself out on it. Like, am I like almost like something's looking at me. I'm like, Tori, we're about to see deer. And then sure enough, we'd see them. I feel like I've kind of detached from that. You don't get into that meditative zone as much when you're always worrying about filming and battery charging and stuff. So that would be the negative. But at the same time, it's also like second nature to me now, right? Yeah. Like the same thing you're doing. It wasn't until I went up and I did this trip up in Moosonee with Buck where I realized how much longer everything I'm doing takes. Because we'd pull and we get to this cabin, we had to dig out the front door. And I'm like, okay, well, I pull out the camera and set up. Buck's already done. I'm like, now I'm filming Buck finishing all the jobs. Right. Like, that's my video, is Buck finishing everything off. Like, you know what I mean? Because now I can't even jump in and finish. He's already done, right? Yep. So that kind of was like, whoa, this is a lot of work. So there must be a level of for sure enjoyment of kind of piecing the story together and knowing people are going to be inspired by seeing that I enjoy, you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't always feel like, yes, I get to pull out the camera in a drizzling rainstorm while I'm portaging. It's not like that though. Right.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun when the conditions are good and spirits are high. Yeah. But that's, as you know, it's important to film the tougher times too. But yeah, when you're solo, I agree, you can get much more into the filming. I have a bit of a sense of guilt when the other person's not doing YouTube. Totally. Because you're like, go and set up a shot on the shoreline, paddle away, and you just end up doing less of it because you feel bad for them. Same with Erin. Like I operate the cameras for the most part. So when we're on a trip together, she has the patience of a saint, and she knows that this pays for a lot of our expenses. Does her face always say
that she doesn't care? Because sometimes Tori's face when I'm filming just says, oh my God, really?
She's pretty good. She has the patience of a saint. She really does. So that helps a lot. But I like how you and Tori keep it real. And
thanks.
I like the like relationship conflict that arises sometimes, and it's very real. I love that. Yeah. And it just shows that you're like comfortable with each other too.
We get along really well on trips though, me and Tori. Yeah. And I asked, it's because I was the one with more experience in the outdoors and camping, but Tori very much wants to be pitching in and doing things. So she would have to try to keep up with me or else I'd just do everything. And I asked her later, I'm like, why do we get along so well when we're on these trips? And she's like, because there's an equal distribution of work.
What's she implying?
She's implying that I don't tidy enough, and she's probably right. I've gotten better, but
I don't know how you guys do it with the kids out there, the filming and everything.
Oh, it's fun, man.
I know. It's a precious memory, too.
It is. Oh, it's what they learn from it. But, you don't do as intense trips with the kids. And when we're having kids, like the first trip we ever did with Wesley, we're like, we're going to get back into this backcountry lake. And we're like, and we'll just paddle 1 kilometer to this island because he's having a meltdown. But it didn't matter. It was so amazing. Yeah. And the fear of your kids getting hurt really amps it up anyway. So you don't need to be running class 4 because you're like way more terrified that to make sure your kids aren't cold and that they're fed and all this anyway. So it seems like a way more exciting adventure anyways. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Sometimes I lurk the comments on yours like everyone does. There's a little lurking that goes on. And sometimes I see the comments saying like, oh, you shouldn't be bringing your kids out there. And I'm triggered. That really pisses me off. But someone would make that judgment when I don't know, you going to bubble wrap your kids and let them play video games in front of a TV the whole day instead?
Well, I mean, especially it's what we get used to is driving our kids to school on a 2-lane highway. Like way more like, you know, like Buck, when he lived in Moosonee, he was like, he didn't need to drive anywhere. And he was saying, now I'm getting back, and I'm like, oh my God, people are just driving on these highways with their kids in winter back and forth. And he was like terrified. He had to get used to driving like this. But then those people would say, oh my God, you take your kids on a canoe trip and go over here and go camping up in Moosonee, right? So it's all kind of like
perspective.
Exactly. And I think because I have that background and skill, I can do that. I'm still worried about it, but yeah, take dogs and kids out there. You're gonna hear about it on YouTube, right?
Yeah, the dog park piece too. Yeah.
But remember, like in our society, it wasn't long ago where people were taking kids from Indigenous people because they lived in the woods, or they they lived in off grid without running water, and they would literally the '60s scoop. You can't raise a child like this, and there's still that kind of thinking out there, which is well-meaning people doing like with what ultimately is probably not in the best interest of children, you know?
No, you got to fit the mold and fit into the system, right?
Yeah, and it's all just what people are comfortable
it's not healthy.
Right?
It's not necessarily healthy at all.
Yeah. Everything does have some risk. You know, I did read the other day that people that are more scared of everything and don't take risk live longer. I'm like, well, that probably checks out, you know? You know, I'm like, that doesn't mean that you can't be a risk taker and still live long. You just have to it has to be calculated, and you have to plan, right? Like I'm like meticulous, dude. Like I don't go out there half cocked. You know what I mean? Like I'm like meticulous. No corners are cut before I'm doing an expedition, right? To the point where like even when Tori would be planning, she's like, really? Like you need to? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, I feel that fear of death is a great motivator. It's probably why I've been successful in this as opposed to anything else. Because I actually have that motivator of, oh my God, I got to be ready or I could get hurt, right?
Yeah, especially once you have a family.
Yeah.
That sense of obligation has to just increase exponentially. Even having Erin, we don't have kids, but knowing that she's at home, I'm always just thinking, like if I'm looking at a rapid, I'm like, I don't know if that's for me. You know, Erin's in my head thinking, I can't do that to her.
Yeah. So, well, that's why men's car insurance goes down when you get married, and then down again when you have kids. Because statistically, you're less likely to do dumb stuff and get yourself killed. I mean, we're also not climbing Mount Everest.
No. It's pretty reasonable risk. I think drowning and hypothermia are by far the biggest risks, but those are manageable usually.
How scared are you of bears?
Not that scared. Like if I'm in grizzly country, then I'm getting a bit more scared because I haven't spent a lot of time in grizzly country, so that's a bit of just unknown, fear of the unknown. Polar bear country, I would be very, very scared. That would really freak me out, and I would want to go with someone who had experience with firearms as well, just in case. Yeah. You?
I did. I feel my brother's more afraid than me. My brother's like, I have a reasonably wise fear of bears. Right? But I'm also very much like, okay, well, I brought this gun out here. Let's have it where it's close by and I can use it. That doesn't mean I'm scared of bears. It just means I have the bear spray, I have the banger, I have the shotgun. I'm not going to leave food all around my camp in grizzly bear country kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
So like, you know, so I do follow protocol, and that's why I'm not scared as well.
Exactly.
But yeah, I still think like it depends on where you are too. Like some areas with polar bears, like on the Labrador coast, I hear a lot worse stories than people like in the Western Arctic, and for whatever reason, you know, in some areas maybe you're just when they're hungry or the time of year or the number of bears, you know, you're more likely to run into issues than others.
Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I was scared of bears, black bears, big time. Like when I started soloing in the backcountry, a rustle of leaves put me on edge, right?
Yeah, it's like a squirrel, but it sounds like a bear.
Or a mouse, probably every time, or just wind. And I remember car camping in Algonquin, front country, literally camping inside of my minivan, and the guys beside me were hanging in hammocks. And at the time, I thought that was madness. I was like, "What do you mean? What if a bear comes?" So it's all, you know, we have these fears that are mostly rooted in unknown. Right?
Yeah.
We're just not experienced in something that makes it scary rather than the inherent danger itself. So, black bears I don't worry about too much, but you just have to have healthy respect. That's all. I've seen countless bears. I have no idea, 100, 200 more black bears, and I've never had one issue. Not one. And some people have. I know that, but...
Yeah, some people have had some more. I've had a couple more interesting occurrences. I talked to some other people that have, but for the most part with black bears, but at the same time, black bears actually have killed more people than any other type of bear too. Just because they live in areas where there's higher populations, right?
And their population is way higher than grizzlies or polar bears too.
There's just way
it's
more
just a
of
numbers
them.
game.
Yeah. But nothing. Ain't no bear trying to get into your tent or nothing like that.
No, I've never had anything conclusive. I've had like fears of noises that I've heard. Maybe it was a bear, but ultimately amounted to nothing.
I did have one where a sow bear was very in Labrador and we yelled at it to run away, and it turned around and ran us with all the hair standing up on the back of its neck, and it burst through some alders, stopped running, and was like standing up like this. That was pretty scary. And we like fired a gun at it, and it didn't run away. And then finally we shot a bear banger, and it blew up, and it like took off slowly. But it was like at the end we're like, that was cool. Like it wasn't like close. It was like 50 yards away, right? Yeah. But other than that, every time I've pretty much come up on a bear or a bear's come up on me, it's been so scared that it's crapped itself and ran away. Like literally. Yeah, like eating raspberry canes, hiking through raspberry canes, I hear, and I just see a patch. A lot of people, when you're bushwhacking, you don't see the animal, you see a patch of it. If you're lucky, right? Fresh turd. Twice that time I saw one. Another time I was sitting there bow hunting off the ground, and all we hear is, I look over, see a patch of the bear, and the trees move. Fresh bear turd right there. Another time in Algonquin, I got to camp. I started walking back in the camp, and exact same thing again. Right? So that's how many times? 1, 2, 3, 4 times, other than that, the other Labrador time there, which was, kind of scary. But yeah, they've all been so terrified. They've shit themselves and bolted away. So I think that's the more likely scenario,
99% of the time.
Have you ever had that happen where it shit
itself? I've never noticed a fresh deuce, no.
Mm-hmm. Never? Yeah.
I don't, not after seeing one. No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
But you're just seeing them from the canoe usually, right? It's more when you come up on them.
That makes sense,
on land.
Trail, yeah.
Yeah. One time I saw one eating berries off a stick like this, sitting on its butt just like a human, and my cousin and my buddy paddled up to it. This is in northern BC on the stick, or is in Alaska, and it just like looked at them like this, probably like 8 feet down from them, looked at them like this, just went back and just started didn't even do anything.
Yeah, it's funny. You'll get if you break up that 99% of bears that aren't going to hurt you, maybe 2/3 of that is going to run immediately. A third don't care, and then it's the 1% who are maybe desperate, ill, or their cubs are there or something, But yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, and I've even heard that it's a myth that black bears are super protective of their cubs.
Well, I can give one example of that where I came across a mother with maybe 3 cubs, and she just shot up a big poplar tree. It was incredible. First of all, how quickly it got up the tree, scaled it like it was running on land almost.
Yeah, wow.
And just left the cubs down there.
Yeah.
We were in the car, so it was no threat. But
right, so I've heard that a few times.
All the golden rules about wildlife, like we were talking about earlier, all creatures are much more complex than we give them credit for.
Right.
And it's like, bears are going to do this in this scenario. Like, that's absolute rubbish. Mm-hmm. Every case is different, right? Well, to say they're always going to be protective, no.
Right. And then just like, because they're all their individual... they're all kind of their individual personalities as well, just like with people. Exactly. And like I told you, we had that bear. We had like a goose in our food barrel that we'd like shot the day before, which is like bleeding all over everything, and like a couple of trout. And we pulled up, and the bears are like up a hill. We'd seen them coming down a rapid, and we had to portage this massive canyon, and the bear was coming down, and so like we walked back to where we could see it. It was coming down, and so. I shot like a heavy rifle, like just to scare it, just so like, off to the side, and it hit some rocks there, and it turned around and started walking away slowly. And then we're like, hey, beat it. And my buddy Marty's like, get out of here. Like they say, like, make noise, yell. Like, this is protocol, make loud noises. When we yelled, it turned around and charged us.
Whoa.
And turned around and started running down the hill.
Wow.
Right? So this is the polar opposite of what they say happened. You know what I mean? So I agree with you on that one. It's not always how things go, right?
Yeah.
And the bear banger is what worked to scare it away, because the bear banger blew up like right in its face, as opposed to the sound didn't come from, at that time, what was probably 80 meters away at the
that would be
muzzle.
Startling.
Yeah.
Bear banger going off the side of your ear.
Yeah.
And speaking of goose in the barrel, I have a gripe for you.
Yeah.
You use your barrel lid to fillet sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
It's madness.
Why, you're gonna cut through it?
It's like homing in on the scent right to your barrel.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah. What? Just with the smell?
Paddle.
My paddle? Yeah, I should use my. But that just always. You know what's good to use? If you find just some bushes, put cranberry bushes. Just put it right on the cranberry bushes, because it never slides. Actually, that's what some native Dene guys showed me in northern Saskatchewan, because on your paddle always slips off.
Yeah.
And the food barrel is also the worst, because it's got that ridge on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I probably use that. I try to give it a good scrub off afterwards, which I probably don't show. Like, I'm not leaving grime all over there.
Busting your chops.
Yeah. But I guess your paddle you're washing off afterwards?
Yeah, I try to. But at least the paddle isn't food, if the bear does find it, that scent.
Oh,
it's not delivering the bear right to
the
food, right?
Yeah, that's, I never even really thought about that. Like, that's probably not the smartest thing that I've been doing now that you mention it. Yeah, I do give it a good rub, scrub off in the water, but yeah, if you're a bear, you have a credible nose, right?
Yeah, that's about as pungent of a scent as you'll get.
Yeah.
To attract a bear, I think.
Yeah, I don't
Fish guts and
I don't do too much I don't do too much trying to tell people do this, don't do that in my videos. Like, I know you do a little bit, but not really. But
not
just
too much anymore.
Yeah,
people don't want to be preached to. You just gotta do what you think is the right way, and it's by example, right?
Well, it's people. Yeah, right.
Except with barbless hooks, I will mention that incessantly. But.
I know you barbless hooks guys, man. Like, Buck Miller is a barbless hook guy, and he's just angry when people aren't using barbless hooks.
Well, some people give me grief for losing a fish, and they'll praise someone who's using a jerkbait with 9 barbed hooks on it, for 3 trebles and live bait, and I'm like, come on.
I mean, yeah, it's. I remember Xander, we were doing the Magnetamon, and he was using barbless hooks. I'm like, the chance that we have time to fish here and catch a pickerel. It's like and the chances are that they're fairly challenging to catch. There's not even that many of them. Like, I'm going to be using barbs because I don't want to lose that fish. Well, I mean, maybe that's a bad attitude. Maybe it should be the opposite. It
depends on your intention too. Like, if you really want to keep it, then use barb. That's fine.
Yeah, I do really want to. keep it.
Yeah, in that case, that makes perfect sense.
But then in some areas, it's like and in some areas it's the law, like NWT and stuff like that.
Yep.
But then it's just even
Manitoba.
Oh yeah, Manitoba is. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
I don't know how enforced it is. But
Yeah.
Some places in Ontario, like Lake Nipigon.
Okay.
Quetico.
Okay.
Single barbless.
Yeah,
which is great.
Lake Nipigon is as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole lake.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
So when you're ice fishing, I was fishing there's a place in the Yukon that the lake is single barbless, and it was challenging. It's like when you're not used to it.
For sure.
Like, I just kept losing a bunch of fish. You know what? When I lose them, when I'm going to turn my GoPro on.
100%. Yeah.
Do you find the same thing?
Yeah. If I had a nickel for every fish I lost turning on the camera. Yeah. Especially, and when you're using barbless, it's that much harder. But I think people are often, their rod is going all over the place.
Yeah.
They're and going like this, and there's too much action. Slow it down, simplify it, keep the bend in your rod and the tip of your rod. That's going to keep tension. If that tip is bent, you will keep tension. So don't go like this. Like, people are going crazy, right? You see that all the time. But just keep it relatively, and you're reeling in the slack. You're lifting up to pull line toward you.
Yeah.
You reel in the slack, and you're keeping that rod tip bent the whole time.
So that's a good way to look at it. Because all I thought is, just always keep tension on your line, but you're judging that by looking at the way your rod's flexed.
All in the rod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reel is just collecting the line, and then if the fish is running, then the drag is doing its job too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's my. I don't know. I was obsessed with fishing, so that's just my perspective.
Well, I'm glad it's good to hear
that
they are doing some barbless stuff, because once the fishery is too not good enough anymore, it's like you won't catch anything. If you know, in places where the fishing is so good, it's like if you're using a similar barbless hook, you should be, because it doesn't matter. You're going to catch fish anyways. Yeah. You know what I mean? Is Lake Nipigon like that? Well, what's the fishing like there?
It can be incredible. Yeah. There's like huge lake trout and pike there. And it's an enormous lake, and not too much pressure. There is a commercial fishery on it, actually. So that puts a bit of a dent in it, but still like the pressure there is pretty limited. But it's also so big that if you're not on the fish, it's feast or famine again, right?
Right, that's the issue. It's such a massive...
Same with Superior.
Superior?
Feast or famine, right? Yeah. You can be on them. It's just insane. Other times...
Xander was telling me when we paddled from the mouth of the Dog back to Wawa, we were just smashing fish.
Yeah.
Like I just had a big Williams whitefish spoon with one weight on it. I probably caught about 5 Lakers. Xander caught a steelhead. We all caught pike. And then he said when you guys went along the Puckasaw coast, you're having problems catching anything, doing like the exact same thing.
It was weird. You know, sometimes it's just a tough
fight. I feel like we had challenges along that stretch too, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, we didn't do as well. Huh. You know?
I know, and you go to all these places and you just think, the fishing's going to be just off the hook, but
that's
it's not always.
You ever been to Phillip Edward Island?
Yeah.
So terrible fishing there. Did you have any luck?
Okay, so I caught my first 40+ inch pike there. And also some muskie there at the same time. Wow. Some nice muskie. That was an ice out. And then I went back once or twice and I got completely skunked.
So because me and my cousin circumnavigated Phillip Edward Island.
Yeah, same.
Did you? And you got all these huge muskie?
That was in the channel, the north side.
Yeah. So there's one little muskie lake, it's called, in there where the channel opens up. So we caught one decent bass by the old docks there, the old dock on that side, right through that muskie section. And then basically caught nothing else the entire time.
Yeah, I would say most of those fish are feeding on pelagic fish, right? That are suspended.
What's a pelagic?
They're suspended in the water column, like tulipy,
thermocline,
stuff like that. Yeah, they'll hang around on the thermocline. They're really fatty fish typically, and fish will gobble them up. So they're like out in bigger water, in deeper water potentially. So those bays might seem like amazing fishing, but they might be pretty seasonal. So then depending on where the forage is.
And you could just be over another area and be smashing giant walleye and freaking muskie and all that. I just found that it was very there was these rocks, but then it was all sand in between the rocks. There wasn't much real structure on the windward side of the island, on the other side.
Right.
It was beautiful though. Super cool place. Amazing. And the year we went, Georgian Bay was fairly warm too. So we were swimming. It was like paradise.
Windswept pines.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Really cool.
That's iconic scenery.
Yeah, I got to get out to Georgian Bay. Even when I did the French, we looped down through the mouth and came up the other channel. So cool.
Yeah.
Hey, with all those, and you're protected by all these islands, right? Yeah. You know, I love it.
Yeah, it's a jewel. We were just in Perry Sound and just looking out there, and on the map, it's just littered with islands. Yeah. Wonderful paddling. French River Delta too.
Yeah. Really cool area. We didn't spend a ton of time, and the watercolor is so clear. Is that natural? Does that have to do with zebra mussels or?
Yeah, I think it's the temperature is a significant factor, and just less life. You know, in warmer, shallower bodies of water, they're typically more fertile compared to deep, cold lakes. You just have less phytoplankton and whatnot, I suppose. Zooplankton, I don't know. I'm not a biologist. That's just my
Well, you learn about this stuff when you fish, right? Like I was like not okay with like not understanding why there's Pacific salmon species in the Great Lakes. And I'm catching salmon. Right. Where did these come from? I'm like, what? They're all imported from the Pacific, and like they don't teach that in school. Like you can go to school in Toronto and have no idea why about that. Like, how is this not the most important thing for all you people? I guess they just don't care about fishing. Yeah, but I do. I learn about all that stuff. I find it all to be, I'm not a biologist, but I find when you fish and learning about the species and how they act and what they do is part of the interest in it all. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I love it. There's a book I'll recommend. It's What a Fish Knows, and it's all about how fish interpret the world and their senses. It sort of has like a anti-fishing bias, to be honest. Like the author was an angler and then eventually got this sense of guilt and wanted to learn more. And anyway, you can become a better angler if you want to listen to it on audiobook too. Cool. But that's a good one for
what's it called again?
What a Fish Knows.
What a Fish Knows.
Johnathan Balcombe, I believe, is the author, if I recall correctly. But
well, I'll have to check that out. Is there anywhere we can where people, I know we talked about your YouTube channel, Lost Lakes, tons of cool stuff out there. You also don't have to solo just in the Yukon to get views, which is nice. You got some really good stuff that, more approachable for people that might be from Ontario as well, and awesome winter stuff. Are you still doing Instagram or Facebook or anything? Or?
A little, I mostly just post there if I'm posting a video, right? Like as a notification, since you're competing with so many people on YouTube these days, they might not even get a notification. So it just helps to put that out on Facebook and Instagram. But one thing I'll plug is Erin's been writing for Paddle and Portage magazine. These really nice guys in Minnesota, local media, really good guys. And she's got some articles written for them. Most of them are you have to subscribe, but they have some other great content. They did an interview with her on their YouTube channel too. So check that out. Erin's been doing some great stuff with them.
Right on.
Yeah, she's a great writer.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Writing about our trips and whatnot. So I would love to do the writing too. I love a bit of writing, but YouTube is keeping me busy enough.
Oh yeah. And as far as that goes, but we wrap it up here, but is there anything that you could share? Like, you took a big jump and you just kind of went for what you're passionate about. Could you share any advice for somebody that maybe wants to really follow what they really want to do in life and is sort of nervous to do it? Could you have any final thoughts on how you might be able to help someone like that?
If you have that feeling, that burning desire you feel like your life isn't fulfilling and you want to be more connected to nature, don't ignore that, because life's too long. They're decades ahead. You may have invested a lot to get your life to where it is, like I did. I went to university for marketing and back to school for map making, but ultimately, not everyone can do this, can expect to do this. You make YouTube videos of your camping trips for a living, but you can still move your life north and get closer to it. And if you have that desire, get out of the cities. If you're stuck there, you can't afford the housing there. Like I couldn't. I bought my first house in Marathon for $65,000. Wow. Yeah, a decent house because it was a mining town and it was just cheap at the time. But anyway, that's not even a down payment in Toronto, right?
No.
And I don't have to fight traffic to get out of the city to the nature anymore. So if you have that burning desire, really work toward moving your life and your career to wilderness, closer to wilderness. You may still have to do the 9 to 5, but if you're closer to wilderness, you'll just have this great sense of relief that you can just get out on the weekends and stop being trapped in a life that doesn't belong to you.
Yeah. Love it. I think I might move to Marathon.
It's a good spot.
Thanks for coming on the show, Jon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was blessed.